obnoxious points of view, the one fellow's fetch being the other fellow's person, that is to see flying cushiots out of his overalls and making fesses amongst his forces on the field. Oh, yea, oh, yea. When the prisoner, soaked in methylated, appeared in dry dock, a patently ambrosiorialized, like Curse's corduroy caricature, wearing, besides stains, rents, and patches, his fight shirt, straw braces, sou'wester, and a policeman's corkscrew trousers, all out of the true, as he had purposely torn up all his Kimtry Manx bespokes in the Mamer time, deposing for his exution with all the floors of sparse and the Royal Irish vocabulary, how the whole Padderjack Martin, tripiesite suet, and all the sulphite of copperers had fallen off him quats unaccountably, like the crystallizations of Alamon even, while he was trying for to stick fire to himself. In fact, he was dripping as he found upon stripping for a pipkin of malt as he feared the cold rain. It was attempted by the Crown, P.C. Robert, to show that King Elois Crowbar, once known as Melike, impersonating a climbing boy, rubbed some pixes of anniluvial peatsmore o'er his face, clucks and pusses, with a clay and turf as the best means of disguising himself, and was to the Middle White Fair in Mudford of a Thursday, feasts of peeler and pole, under the ill-assumed names of Tykingfest and Rabwork, picked by him and Anthony out of a telephone book, allegedly with a pedigree pig, unlicensed, and a hyacinth. They were on that sea by the plain of Ayr 999 years, and they never cried crack or ceased from regular paddle-wicking, till that they landed their two and a trifling selves, amadst camel and ass, greybeard and suckling, priest and pauper, mater matron and merry meg, into the middle of the mudstorm. The gathering convened by the Irish agricultural and preposteral organizations to help the Irish muck to look his brother Dane in the face, and attended, thanks to Larry, by large numbers of Christies and Jews' totems, to spite of the deluge, was distinctly of a scattery kind, when the ballybricken he could get no good of, after cock of the walking through a few fancy-fought mains, ate some of the doorrake. The pikey later selling the gentleman ratepayer because she, France's sister that is to say, ate a whole side of his, the animal's, sty on a struggle street, qui sta Troia, in order to pay off hiss or lick 6 doubloons 15 arrears of his, the villain's, not the rumbler's, rent. Remarkable evidence was given anon by an eye, ear, nose, and throat witness, whom Wesleyan chapel-goer suspected of being a plain-clothes priest, W.P., situate at Null Null Medical Square, who upon letting down his rice and pea screen cover-disc, and having been sullenly cautioned against yawning while being grilled, smiled he had had a one-bumper at parting from Mrs. Mulroe in the morning, and stated to his elicitor under his Morse must accents, God bless, that he slept with the bona fides, and that he would be there to remember the filth of November, hat in a ring rowdio, which, with the jubilees of Juno and the dates of old langxiety, was going, please the rainmaker, to descends within the ephemerides of profane history, all one with tournay yet to slay and tomorrow, and one thing which would particularly strike a person of such sorely tried observational powers as Sam, him, and Moffat, though there's not to reason why. The striking thing about it was that he was petrified to see, hear, taste, and smell, as his time of night, how Hyacinth O'Donnell, B.A., described in the calendar as a mixer and word painter, with part of a Sevis Pachem, Gaeltacht for Dungfolk, on the fair green at the hour of 24 o'clock, sought the bully Cassidy of the Friedhofer to sack, sock, stab and slaughter single-handed another two of the old kings, Gush MacGael and Roaring O'Crian Jr., both changelings, unlocalized, of no address and in non-communicables, between him and whom, ever since Wallops, before the Mies of Lewis, bad blood existed on the ground of the Boer's trespass on the bull, or because he first parted his polar beaver hair in 2 ways, or because they were creep-foxed and grouse-uppers over a nippy and a noveletta, or because they could not say meese, mute and daft, mead. The litigants, he said, local congsmen and Donalds, kings of the Arrans and the Dalkeys, kings of Mud and Tory, even the goat king of Kilorglin, were egged on by their supporters in the shape of better women with bow-strung hair of Carthaginian ruddiness, waving crimson petties and screaming from Izzard's tower top. There were cries from the thick-sets in court and from the MacDublins on the Boher-na-Breen of mind the bank from Banagher Mixer, produce O'Donnell, aye, exhibit his relics, boo, use the tongue more, give lip less. But it oozed out in Dead Man's dark scenery court, through cross-examination of the case-hardened testis, that when and where that knife of knives, the three-partied ambush was laid, roughly spouting around half hours twixt dusk and dawn, by water hoses Middle European time, near Stop and Think, High Chief Evervirons and only Abfall tree in all the land. There was not as much light from the widowed moon as would dim a child's altar. The mixer, accordingly, was bluntly broached, and in the best Basel to boot, as to whether he was one of those lucky cocks for whom the audible, visible, noseable, edible world existed. That he was only too cognitively, connotively, cogitabundantly sure of it because, living, loving, breathing, and sleeping morpho-melosopho-pancreates, as he most significantly did, whenever he thought, he heard, he saw, he felt, he made a bell, clipper, 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 clipper. Whether he was practically sure, too, of his lugs and through his names in this king and blouse-man business, that he was, ridiculously so. Certified, as cad could be lying, be the loney I will. It was morbus o' somebody, a quite. Saturday's son, a Saturn weddings. And how did the green-eyed mister arrive at the B.A.? That it was like his pole. A cross-grained trapper with murty odd ogs, awful-rated airs, inquiline nays, and a twitcherous mouth? He would be. Who could bit you at to a 10-yard full when asked told? Batter or jobber. Some major bore, too. Eagerness. And with tumblerous legs, Reedip nominated, Helming American wine, Rotter Egbert, Cromwell Odin, Maximus Esme Saxon, Asa Vercingetorix, Ethelwolf Ruprecht, Walla, Bentley, Osmond, Dicehearty, Drasselman. Holy St. Ethel, the very phoenix. It was Chudley Magnol once more between the Defodates and the dumb scene. The two child spies were pressing him asa de Volog, but the renting of his rock was from the three wicked Vancouver's forests, bent down a wits, art thou sure? You betty Cumberland comes. One of the Oxmen's thingabosses, fad? And had he been refreshed by the founts of bounty, playing There Is a Pain a Land in Long's gurgling barrel? A loss of Lord Edward and a lack of Sir Philip a surgeon at Showeradown could suck more gargling bubbles out of the 5 lamps in Potteran's praise. Wirgeling and Mary's, as whose wouldn't, laving his leaf time in Blackpool. But, of course, he could call himself Tem, too, if he had time to. You but he could, any Tom. When he pleased, win and place. A stoker, temptated by eavesdripping, against the driver, who was a witness as well. Sacred Avatar, how the devil did they guess it? 2 dreamiums in 1 dromium. Yes, and no error. And both as like as a duel of lentils. Precisely. So, he was pelted out of the Coram Popular, was he? Be the powers that be, he was. The prince, in principle, should not expose his person. Mac Evewole. Ruske man, camarade? Sooner Galwegian, he would say. Not unintoxicated, fair witness. Drunk as a fish-up. Asked to whether she minded whether he smoked. Not if he barked into phlegms. Anent his ejaculations to his cross-can lorn cosser. It was corso in curso on courser again. The gracious miss, was we not doubt sensible how Yellowwatty on the forks was altered? That she easily was, who doubt may not. As to his religion, if any, it was the see you Sunday sort. Exactly what he meant by a pederast prig? Be Jacobs, just a gent who prayed his Lent. And if middle-classed Portaverus was a usual beast, by night as useful as a vomit to a shorn man. If he had Ragnarized their courts-martials, that day and days he had. Lindondelly, Coke or Skillies, spell me gart without a gate. Hardly a drop. The grazing rights, Mrs. Magistra Martinetta expired with the expiry of the goat's sire, if they were not mistaken. That he exactly could not tell the worshipfuls, but his mother-in-waiters had the receipt for the price of the coffin, and that he was there to tell them that herself was the vilified that could tell them kit-kat. A maundering tongue in a poundering jowl. Father order about the matters of pronunciation. Distributory endings. And we recommends quare hircum? No answer. Unde gentium fe? Noah. Are you not dancing on the edge of a volcano? Sire, I am deed. And how old of him? He was intendant to study polo, which was meant in a shirt of 2 shifts Macomb made, or up Finn 3-hatted ladder, that a head in thighs under a bush at the sun face would bait a serpent to a mill race through the heather. Arm, bird, colour, deafdom, ethnic fort, perhaps? Sure, and Glomps Candy Yot Alphason as well. Pokey Jason's then, in a Pigigesis. On a pontiff's order, as sure as there's an Italian attack. As a galoli bit to Joss, Liali and Tululi. But why this hankout chaff, and whence this second tone, son yet son? He had the cowtaw in his boxer's play of face. So this, that sola sistra, setting odds evens at defiance, took the Lord from labour writer? What displaced Tob, Dilk and Halley not been greatly in love with the game? And, changing the vendors from the king's head to the republican's arms, as to the pugnacities evinced from flagfall to antipost, during the affrays round Father Time's beckside, and the regents in the plant zone reigning, with the skiddy stars and the Morcan wind up, how they appealed to him then, that it was wildfire's night on all the Betty Gallaghers. Mick Michael's swords shrieking shreks through the Wilkinses, and Necka Nicholas toasting forks pricking prongs up the tunny bladders. Let there be fight, and there was, fought. On the sight of the angels, you said. Guinea's gap, he said, between what they said and the pussy kitties. In the middle of the garth, then, that they mustn't touched it. The devoted couple was or were only 2 dissipated solicitresses on the job of the unfortunate class on Saturn's mountain fort. That was about it, yeah. And Camillus then said to Gemellus, I should know you perfectly. And Gemellus then said to Camillus, yes, your brother. Absolutely. And if it was all about that, egregious sir, about that and the other, if he was not alluding to the hole in the wall, that he was, when he was not eluding from the hole of the woman. Briefly, how such begin all finally struck him now. Like the crack that broke the bank in Multifarnham. Whether he fell in with what they meant, cursed that he suppoxed he did. Thos Thoris Thomers Thom, the rudicis rotter and robuctum, surtopical and subhuman. If it was, in Yapanoi's language, ach, bad clap, ooh, ah, ogs and oars with Ryan O'Kelly, to put it tertianly we wrong, shocking, such as Turley pierced our reelies that he might never that night, freely and rurally, bloody awful Mecklenburg, hura hora scorta, strumpa pornan any cocksappas, tippa tappa toppa, strippa potonac, eh? You have it all right. Merd rock and oncush. But a new complexion was put upon the matter, when to the perplexedly uncondemnatory bench, whereon Punic judgeship strove with penal law, the senior judge of all, Pega Festy, as soon as the outer layer of stucco muck had been removed at the request of a few live jurors, declared in a loud burst of poesy through his Brythonic interpreter on his oath, with best wishes for a very merry Christmas, whereas take notice be the relics of the bones of the storybuckle that was ate by Cleopatra, the sow, princess of parked porkers, afore God and all their honours and king's commons, that what he would swear to the tyranny of Dundalgan, or any other tyranny, if live Thurkles followed him about, sure that was no steal, and that, nevertheless, what was deposited from that eyeballed, ear-big, nose-naving, gut-throat, he did not fire a stone, either before or after he was born, down and up to that time. And incidentalizing, that they might talk about Marcasby, or they might walk to Ballastarte, or they might join the neighbour party and come on to Portafude. This the sockdolager had the neck to endorse, with the head bowed on him over his outturned nor'easter, by protesting to his lip-readers, with a just-been-cleaned barefacedness, a beam of moonlight's hope, in the same Trelawney what he would impart, please bench, to the Llywyd Joses, and the gentlemen in juries, and the four of masters, who had been all those yarns yearning for that good one, about why he left Dublin, that Amrita Beaker Codling doom, as an Inish man was as good as any Canton at all. If he was to perish by the market stake before the dawning of the morn, he should never ask to see sight or light of this world, or the other world, or any either world of Tirnanog, as true as he was there in that jack-a-box that minute, or wheeled or whined, no thanks to use, the inexhaustible wassail-horn taught of Iskibosh, the health up the wealth of the unknown abgod of the fire of the moving way of the hawks with his heroes in war horror, if ever in all his exchequered career he up or lave a chancery hand to take or throw the sign of a mortal stick or stone at man, yo lamb or Salvation Army, either before or after being baptized, down to that most holy and every blessed hour. Here upon the half-kneed castle knockers attempting kitogishly to lilt his holiness the pause, and make the sign of the Roman Catholic faith, Charoshes dressed. In his excitement, the Lado had broken extro-Castilian, into which the whole audience persevered and pursued him. Oya podrida outbroke much yelachtas from owners in the hall, in which, under the mollification of Methaglin, the testifier reluctantly, but with ever so ladylike indecorum, joined. Ha ha! The hilario hoot of Pegger's wind-up come justled as neatly with the tristy tone of the wet pinters, as were they Issy et Ille equals of opposites, evolved by a one same power of nature or of spirit, iste, as the sole condition and means of its him and her manifestation, and polarized for reunion by the synthesis of their antipathies. Distinctly different were their duas destinies. Whereas the maidies of the bar, a peerless Trentine, a lunarized score, when the Eranthus murmured, shome the posed, fluttered and flattered around the willingly pressed, nominating him for the swiney prize, complimenting him, the captivating youth, on his having all his senses about him, stinking hyacinths through his curls, oh fine odor, and bringing busses to his cheeks, their masculine Irish arose, his niscre, and legando round his nice new neck for him, and pizzicagnolling his woolly wags, with their dindy-dandy sugar-de-candy macream apostine flawns courier to believe them of all his untiring young dames, and send treats in their time. Why, men. But it was not unobserved of those present, their worships, how, of one among all, her deputized to defame him by the Lunar Sisters Celibacy Club, a love-looking leap girl, all alonely, Gentia Gemma of the make giddy-culling reeks, he, wan and pale in his unmixed admiration, seemed blindly, mutely, tastelessly, tactlessly enamorate with her upon him in shining amminglement, the shame of his hissue shifting into the shimmering of her hers. Youthsy beautsy he's her chap, and she'll tell mammas when she gaes home, till the wild wish of her she melted most musically mid the dark deep of his sheshon. And whereas distracted, for was not just this in effect which had just caused that, the effect of that which it had caused to occur, the four justices laid their wigs together, Uncius, Muncius, Puntius, and Pilax, but could do no worse than promulgate their standing verdict of Nolan's brumans, whereon after King, having murdered all the English he knew, picked out his pockets, and left the tribunal scot-free, trailing his Tommy-Lummy's tunic in his hurry, therein under proudly showing off the blink pitch to his breeches, to prove himself and Plesius a rail genteel. To the Swiss bobby guards, curial but court-like, Commodore Vale or hairy Arthur Generosi, the firewater lover retorted with such a vine-smelling, 42 ages raw downham's tannu hide, as would turn the Latin stomach even of a Thomas Aquinas. We were prepared for the chap's clap-cap. The accent but took us as by surprise, and now we're guessing it like gush-gash from a burner. so that all the 2 from 30 advocatesses within echo, pulling up their briefs at the Krieg cry, shun the punman, safely and soundly soccered that Fenneman parish poser. How dare he, impromptu right away, Hames, much to his thanks, gracias agam, to all the wrong donatresses, bis, drink battles, dingy dwellings, where, for like your true venison Esau, he was dove timid as the deers at bottom. He shat in, zoo, like the muddy gold bind who he was, done, the chastity's bells conclaiming, you and your gift of your gaft of your garbage abat our favor, and gain gridando, on verge now putor, scam, shams, shames. And so it all ended. Atha kama dharma moksha. Ask Kavya for the cake. And so everybody heard their plaint, and all listened to their applause. The letter, the litter, and the suitor, the bitter. Of eyebrow pencil, by lip stipple pen, borrowing a word and begging the question, and stealing tinder and slipping like soap. From dark Rosa Lane, a sigh and a weep. From Lesbia Louche, the beam in her eye. From lone Coogan Barry, his arrow of song. From Sean Kelly's anagram, a blush at the name. From I am the Sullivan, that trumpeting tramp. From suffering Dufferin, the sit of her style. From Kathleen May Vernon, her maybe fair efforts. From Philthepot Curran, his Scotch love Macreather. From him opus 2, Philadelphus, the Weario, the Lirio. From Samuel Lever or Damuel Lover, that jolly old molly bit or that board saunter by. From Tim Finnegans Wake tribes, loss of strength to his sawheel. From the wedding on the green o' girlies, the Gretnas of Joy Boys. From Pat Mullen, Tom Mallon, Dan Meldon, Don Malden, a slick stick picnic made in moat by Muldoon. A solid man saved by his sillied woman. Crack-a-joking away like a hearse on fire. The elm that whimpers at the top told the stone that moans when stricken. Wind broke it, wave bore it, reed wrote of it, Sice ran with it. Hand tore it, and wild went war. Hen treeved it, and plight pledged peace. It was folded with cunning, sealed with crime, uptied by a harlot, undone by a child. It was life, but was it fair? It was free, but was it art? The old hunks on the hill read it to perlection. It made Ma make merry and Sissy so shy, and rub some shine off Shem and put some shame into Sean. Yet Una and Eta spill famine with drought, and Agrippa the propastad spells tribulations in his threne. Ah, furchte, fruchte, timid Danaedes. Ina Milo Melomon, Frey is Frau and Swee is two, when Swoo is free, Anna Mala woe is we. A pair of sycophantes with amygdalane eyes, one old obster lumpy pumpkin, and 3 meddlers on their slies. And that was how from sin from sun, a city arose, fin fin, fun fun, a sitting arose. Now tell me then, what was it? A. O. Narrator's note. These 3 lines are written in a special way, all towards the center of the page. Line 1 reads, what was it? Question mark. Line 2, capital A, 10 dots, exclamation mark. Line 3, question mark, 9 dots, capital O, exclamation mark. End of narrator's note. So there you are now. There they were, when all was over again, the 4 with them, sitting around up in their judges' chambers in the muniment room of their marshalsea, under the suspices of Lally, around their old traditional tables of the law, like so many Solons, to talk it over all the same again. Well and truly dry, suffering law the dring, according to king's evelins. So help her goat and kiss the book. Festives and hijinks, and Ginty on and her Beatty Rossi Betty Doty, and not to forget now, Aduna O'Donnell. The 4 of them, and thank court now there were no more of them. So pass the push for port's sake, be it soon. Ah-ho. And do you remember Singabob, the bad father, the same, the great how'd you call him, and his old nickname, Dirty Daddy Pantaloons, in his monopoliums behind the War of the 2 Roses, with Michael Victory, the Sheeman's priester, before he caught his paper dispensation from the Poke, old Minnis and Minster, York? Do I mind? I mind the gush up the man like Ballybock manure works on a trade wind's day, and the O'Moily Graces and the O'Brieny Rosses chaffing him bluish-face and playing him pranks. How do you do to due north, mister? Get into my way. Ah, dear o' me for sail o' she, gone over the bays. When gin a body meet a body? Yerra, why would he heed that old gasometer with his whooping coppin and his dying boozy cough, and all the birds of the south side after her, Minxie Cunningham, their dear divorcee darling, Jimmys and Johnnies to be her Joe? Hold hard. There's 3 other corners to our Isles Cork float. Sure 'tis well I can tell a smell him H.C.E. that would take a township's breath away. Gob, and I knows him too well as I do myself, heaving up the quay wall by the 32 to 11 with his lime-looking horse bags full of sesame seed, the white-side Kaffir, and his seamen's effluvium, and his scent-painted voice puffing out his thundering big brown cabbage. Pah! Thought I'd lad a girl for his pa's Dean Finn. Go borrow, says he, lanky-shied. Go buggy ye, says I. Oh, breezes, I sniffed that lad long before anyone. It was when I was in my father out at the west, and she and myself, the red-headed girl, first nighting down Sycamore Lane. Fine field play we had of it mid the Kissabets, frisking in the cool, curled dusk of the lushiness. My perfume of the pampas, says she, meaning me, putting out her nether lights, and I'd sooner one precious sip at your pure mountain dew than enrich my acquaintance with that big brewer's belch. And so they went on, the 4-bottle men, the analists, ungwam and nungwam and lungwam again, their anschluss about her who's before and his whereafters, and how she was lost away in the fern, and how he was founded deep on deep in an ear, and the rustlings and the twitterings and the raspings and the snappings and the sighings and the paintings and the ucucooings and the hist, the spring-apartings, and the hast, the bye-bye scuttlings, and all the scandal-monkers and the pure craigs that used to be, up that time, living and lying and rating and riding round Nuns' Belly Square. And all the buds in the bush, and the laughing jackass. Harrick, 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 the rose is white in the dark. And some fella's nose has got rhinoceros from haunting the rose in the park. So all rogues lean to rhyme, and contra-drinking themselves about Lily Trilly Law upon Hilly, and Mrs. Niall of the 9 Corsages, and the old Marcus, their best afar, and are assured there was never a Marcus at all among the Manleys, and dear Sir Amory, queer Sir Roomery, and the old house by the Chirpa Lizard, and all the goings-on so very wrong long before, when they were going on retreat in the old Gameldags, the 4 of them, in Milton's Park under lovely Father Whisperer, and making her love with his stuff in the languish of flowers, and feeling to find was she mushy, and wasn't that very both of them, the saucy sisters, a drawer in all Macree, and Peep, meeting waters most improper, Pipette, ball round the garden, trickle, 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 tris, please me, ma, may I go flirting? Farmers gone with a groom, and how they used her, mused her, licked her, and cuddled. I differ with ye. Are you sure of yourself now? You're a liar, excuse me. I will not, and you're another. And Lully, holding their breach of the peace for them. Poo lol lolly. To give and to take, and to forego the past, and all will be forgotten. Ah-ho. It was too bad to be falling out about her kindness, pet, in the shape of orang's time. Well, all right, Lely, and shake a hand and shank us more, for Craig's sake, be it suck. Well, even should not the framing up of such figments in the evidential order bring the true truth to light as fortuitously as a dim seer's setting of a star chart might, heaven helping it, uncover the nakedness of an unknown body in the fields of blue, or as forhearingly as the Sib speeches of all mankind have foliated earth seizing them from the root of some funner stotter, all the soundest sense to be found immense, our special mentalists now holds securus judicat orbis terrarum, that by such playing possum, our hageous curious ancestor bestly saved his brush with his posterity, you charming co-parsoners, us heirs of his taily. Gun dogs of all breeds were beagling with renounced Urbi and Orbic bugles, hot to run him, given law, on a scent breast-high, keen for the worry. View, from his holt, out-ratted across the Jewel-tide's genial course lands of Humphrey's Chase, from Mullinahob and Peacock's Town, then bearing right upon Tankard's Town, the outlier of White Nolan, which Mr. Lowenstyle Fitzurse's basset beaters had first misbadgered for a bruin of some sort, led bears the run, then through Raystown and Horlockstown, and looping the loop to Tankard's Town again. Year canny hare for doubling, through Cheever's Town they raced him, through Loughlin's Town and Nutstown, to wind him by the boolies. But from the good turn when he last was lost, check upon ye hill of rut in full winter coat with ticker pads, pointing for his rooming house, his old Nord-Est, in his roll-top Royal Hessians, a deaf foxer's volponism hid him close in covert, miraculously raven-fed and buoyed up in rumour, reticule, onasum, and abomacum, upon may all Bruham have his mead, the cream-clotted sherriness of cinnamon syllabub, mickle raved, nickel saved. Hence hounds hide home. Preservative perseverance in the re-education of his intestines was the rebuttal by whilk he sort of get the big bulge on the whole bunch of spa-soakers, dieting against glues and gravies in that sometime pre-street protown. Vainly, violence, virulence, and vituperation sought well-nigh utterly to tax and abridge, to derail and depontify, to enrate and inroad, to ungoad and unhume the great shipping mogul and underlinen overlord. But the spoil of hesitance, the spell of hesitancy, is a take, is it ash, tittery-toe, tattery-tail, has it hence hump on a dimply, hey, 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 a wincy-winky. Assemblymen murmured, Renard is slow. One feared for his days. Did there yawn? 'Twas his stomach. Eruct the liver, a gush from his visuals. Pong, deliver him or load. He had laid violent hands on himself, it was brought in Fugger's newsletter, laid down, all in, fagged out, with equally melancholy death. For the triduum of Saturnalia, his goat servant had paraded his willing sons in the forum, while the Jenny infanted the last, to be greeted raucously, the yard stated, with oohs and effoys, and measured with missiles too from 100 of manhood, and a whimmering of wivies. Big went the bang, then wild wide was quiet. A report, silence. Last farmer put it under eater. The noise or the lull had driven him blem, blem, stun blem. Sparks flew. He had fled again, open Shanshima, this country of exile, sloughed off, sidles-homed via the subterranean, shored with bedboards, stowed away and anchored in a Dutch-bottomed tank, the Arsa, hard SS Finlandia, and was even now occupying, under an Islamitic new hame in his 7th generation, a physical body, Cornelius McGrath, bad old character, commoner wrong can bung, in Asia Major, where, as Turk of the theatre, first house all flatty, the king 11 sharps, he had bepiastered the bike dancers from the opulence of his omnibox, while as Arab at the street door, he bepestered the bombashors for the alms of a Paris pence. Wires hummed. Peacefully general astonishment, assisted by regretitude, had put a term till his existence. He saw the family sagat, resigned, put off his remainders, was recalled and scrap-heaped by the maker. Chirpings crossed. An infamous private ailment, vulgo vario veneral, had claimed end right, closed his vicious circle, snap. Jams jarred. He had walked towards the middle of an ornamental lily pond when inebriated up to the point where braced shirts meet knickerbockers as wangfish daring the buoyant waters, when Rodmen's first aiding hands had rescued un from very possibly several feel of demi-fresh water. Mush spread. On Umbrella Street, where he did drinks from a pumps, a kind of workman, Mr. Whitlock, gave him a piece of wood. what words of power were made fast between them, ec names and och nomes, ac nomina, ec numina. That, oh that, did Hansard tell us, would gar gans Dobbs earwag in every pub of all the Chita. That he believes a batten, while Horgan hears a hod, yet here prefers a punsel shapnel, and cope and bull go cup and ball. And the Cassidy, Craddock, Rome and Ream, round Ervig and Ervaga is still immer and immer a wagering over it, a cradle with a care in it, or a casket with a kick behind. Toties testies, quoties questies. The war is in words, and the wood is the world. Mapley me, willowy we, hickory he, and you yourselves. How for him chirrupeth ever each bird, from gold on glory to glowworm gleam. We were low quacks, did we not tacit turn? Else were there here no concern of the Guinnesses, but only the ruining of the rain has heard. Estu popotoro, cracklings cricked, a human pest, cycling, pissed, and recycling past about the sledgy streets. Here he was, pussed again. Moth, nuisance, noised. He was loose at large and, oh baby, might be anywhere, when a disguised ex-nun of huge stand build and masculine manners in her fairly fat 40s, corpulenta gigasta, hat-racted attention by arbitrary conduct with a omnibus. Aerials buzzed to coastal listeners of an Ortax Bro collector's budget, fully bigs, sporran, tie, tough, tabard, and bloody anti-chill cloak, its tailor's grandfather's tab, reading VPH, found nigh Skull Brothers' hole, and divers shivered to think what kind of beast, wolves, cropisses, or fourpenny friars, had devoured him. C.W. cast wide, Vidpin's lick, droneth Svertgleam, Valkyr locked. On his Pinkster's postern, the boys had it at Whit Weekend, had been nailed an inked-up name and title, inscribed in the national cursive, accelerated, regressive, filiform, turreted, and envenomoloped in pigotry. Move up, mumpty, make room for rumpty, by order, Nick Eccles plug. And this go no Pentecostal jest about it. How gregarious his race soever, or skilful, learned, wise, cunning, knowledgeable, clear, profound his saying, fortitudo fraught, or prudentia proven, were he chief, count, general, field marshal, prince, king, or Miles the slasher in his person. With a Molior murder mansion in the Breffnian Empire, and a place of inauguration on the hill of Tullymongan, there had been real murder, of the really royal Raxacraxian variety, the MacMahon chaps it was, that had done him in. On the Fee de Verda, the rampart combatants had left him lying, with his dexter hand-coup rest erected, in a pureed pour me bloody proper. Indeed, not a few thick and thin well-wishers, mostly of the Clontarf-minded class, Colonel John Ball O'Rourke, for example, even ventured so far as to loan or beg copies of D. Blainsey's trilingual tri-weekly Scatterbrains afternoon poshed, so as to make certain sure one time and be satisfied of their quasi-contribusodalitarians having become genuinely quite beatly dead, whether by land, whether by water. Transocean Attila clamoured him, the latter. Shall their hope then be silent, or Macfarlane lack of lamentation? He lay under leagues of it, in deep Bartholomewn's deep. Achtung, pozor, attention, Viceroy besides mucky young piggescoolis. Three postin ernes, eventer mid Lochlana fohoch e Finnisgehaven. Banalana bangs Ballyhooly out of her buttery of a bullavog. But their bright little contemporaries notwithstanding, on the morrowing morn of the suicidal murder of the unrescued expatriate, as like as a snake comes slidewant down that oak tree onto the Duke of Beavers, you may have seen some liquid amber exude exotic from a balsam poplar at Partinalax limestone, rode and cried, ABE's Magnifica, not noble fur? 9:15, imploring his recipiency, saw the infallible spike of smokes just stiff punctual from the 7th gable of our Quintus Centimachus Porphyroid butter tower, and then thirsty PM, with oaths upon his lastingness, en caicos her auspices, annos longos patimor. The lamps of maintenance, beacons far afield in a half the zuggerat, all brevet named, the wasting wyvern, the tawny of his mane, the swing-low swaying blue paw, the outstanding man, the lull-like lady, being litten for the long, O land, how long, life's night, with suffusion of fine-glass transom and lead-light panes. Wherefore let it hardly by any being thinking be said either or thought that the prisoner of that sacred edifice, where he an Ivor the boneless or an Olaf the hide, was at his best a one-stone parable, a rude breathing on the void of to be, a venter hearing his own Bach speech in backwords, or more strictly, but pristerned initials, the clue key to a world-room beyond the room world. For scarce one, or pathetically few, of his dodecanal salmon livers cared seriously or for long to doubt with Kurtuled Van Dyke the gravitational pull perceived by certain fixed residents, and the capture of uncertain comets chance drifting through our system, suggesting an authenticitatem of his aliquitudinis, the canonicity of his existence as a tesseract. Be still, O quick, speak him dumb, hush, ye fronds of Ulma. Dispersal, women wondered. Was she fast? Do tell us all about, as we want to hear all about, so tell us all about her. The why, or whether she looked to Lottie like us is, and whether he had his window up like them's as shut. Notes and queries, tip-bids and answers, the laugh and the shout, the ards and downs. Now list it to one another, and list them down, and smoothen out your leaves of rose. The war is o'er. Whim, 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 whim. Was it Unity Moore, or Estella Swift, or Varina Fay, or Quarter Quaidam? Thomas, mark for your uncle. Pig eyes, hold up, Major leg. Who but who, for the second time of asking, was then the scourge of the paths about folk-rich Luca Elizabeth was wont to be asked, as in ages behind, of the Homo Capite Erectus? What price Peabody's money, or, to put it bluntly, whence is the Harrington's white cravat? As in epochs more Cainozoic, who struck Buckley, though nowadays, as then times, every school filly of 70 moons or more, who knows her entomologies, and every colleen ball a roof, and every red flannel-waving war wife and widow piece upon Dublin wall forever, knows as yayas is yayas, how it was Buckley self, we need no blooding paper to tell it neither, who struck, and the Russian generals, instead of Buckley, who was caddishly struck by him when be herself. What full pride Paul poison in the Spy of Three Castles, or which hate-filled smiley cellar. And that such a vitriol of venom, that Queen's head affranchisant, a quiet stinking plaster zeal could cover, pre-posted or post-paid. The lounge lizards of the pump room had their 9 days' jeer, and pratch cats at their platch pails too, and Holland Polandum beside, spas bismas. The Janie Jonis, when, still believing in her own glass, when Isars were twinkling that the upper reaches of her mouthless face and her impermanent waves were the better half of her, one nearer him, dearer than all, first warming creature of his early morn, bondwoman of the man of the house, and murmur of all the Maccavics, she who had given his eye for her bed and a tooth for a child, till 1 and 110 and 100 again, O me and O ye, cadet and prim, the hungry and Anne Green, and if she is older now than her teeth, she has hair that is younger than thine, my dear. She who shuttered him after his fall, and waked him without sparing, and gave him keen, and made him able, and held Adazillas to each arch of his nose. She who will not raster from her running to seek him, till, with the help of O'Camic, some such time that she shall have been after hiding the crumb ends of his enormousness in the are you looking for pearl far sea, Ori, Uria, stood forth, burned the Gorgony old Dan world, in Gogor's name for Gagger's sake, dragging the countryside in her train, Finnegan here and Funnekin there, with her Louise Queen's brogues and her Cullender buzzle, and her little bolero boa and all, and 2 times 20 curly cornies for her headdress, specs on her ears, and spuds on her eyes, and a circus fix riding her Parisiennes cockneys, avant her straddle from equerry Egon, when tink in the church close, clinked step lower jasima Sunday, sola, with pawns, prelates and pukas pelotting in her piece bag, for handyman the chomp escoro, bisque basque, to crush the slander's head. Weary weeny white, plead for more and more, Notre Dame de la Ville, mercy of thy barmhearty heat. O Groudnix beyond her battate, wart of the druggist, bulk him no bulkest, and let him rest, thou wayfarer, and take no grave spoil from him, neither mar his mound. The bane of Tuff is on it. Where? But there's a little lady waiting, and her name is A.L.P, and you'll agree she must be she, for her holden hair heaps hanging down her back. He spent his strength a mock harum-scarums, Poppy, Naranci, Gialia, Clora, Marinka, Aniline, Parma. And ilka those dames had her rainbow humours, yet for Wilco her whims, but he coined a cure. Tiff, tiff today, kissy, kissy tonight, and age-long pine tomorrow. Then, who but crippled with children would speak up for dropping with sweat? Sold him her lease of 9,990, tresses, undresses, so die dainty. Goo, the Groot gudgeon, gulped it all. Who was the C.O.D.? Bum. At Island Bridge she met her tide, at a bum, at a bum, at a bum boom. The Finn had a flux and his Ebba a ride, at a bum, at a bum, at a bum boom. We're all up to the years in hues and crybies. That's what she's done for we. Woe. Nomad may roam with Nabuck, but let nae man laugh at Jordan, for we have taken our sheet upon her stones, where we have hanged our hearts in her trees, and we list, as she bids us, by the waters of Babylon. In the name of Anna the All-Merciful, the ever-living, the bringer of plurabilities, hallowed be her eve, her sing-time sung, her rill be run, unhemmed as it is uneven. Her untitled mamafesta, memorializing the most highest, has gone by many names at disjointed times. Thus we hear of the Augusta Angustissimost for old Sebastia's salvation, Rockabill Booby and the Wave Trough. Here's to the relics of old decencies, Anastessa's rise to notice, Nickel Down Duddy Gun, and a Reich Sir Cannon, my golden one on my silver wedding, Amory Tristam, and Issy Seth a Sawyer till a Strem, Ik Dik Dope et tu mihi. By birthplate for a bite, which of your Hester days mean ye tomorrow? Oh, begun the Hebrew hit Waterman the brain, Arcs and his ceiling fleet chinks on the floor, Rebus de Hibernicus. The crazier letters, groans of a Britoness, Peter Peepler picked a plot to pitch his popolin, an apology for a big, some such noun as husband or husboat or hosebound is probably understood, for we have also the Pluther plethoric, my hoons bood Hans bads a journey to Portergill gone, and he never has the hour. Ought we to visit him? For Arc, Fizou, Cleopatra's needlework, picturing Albrum on the Sahara with the combing of the camels and the parlour maids of Egypt, cock in the pot for father, plagiat vestre, a new cure for an old clap, where portentos they'd grow gonder, how I'd wish I wos a geese. Gettle netty, trust him not, when the myrtles of Venice played to Blockus's line, to plunge me high he waves Chilton on friends. Ormond Skew visits Amen Mott. E'en though I granny a be, he would fain me cuddle, 20 of chambers, weighty 10 beds, and a one set of room. I led the life. Through the boxer cocks arising in the house with the golden stairs, the following folk, he's my O Jerusalem and I'm his Poe, the best in the West, by the stream of Zemzem on the zigzag hill, the man that made his mother in the Marlbury train, try our tile on a taub, the log of Annie to the base all, Nopper tipped a nappy-wank to his naughty little dancy girls, for it is Orl, the king of Orlbird, in Timur Minilisp of an exterior monoloth. Drink to him, my jockey, and thou'lt be mine thy winnowing sheep. I ask you to believe I was his mistress. He can explain, from Victrolia Nuance to Albert Nuance. Da's a daisy, so gimme your hansel too. What Barbara's done to a barrel organ before the rank tank and bobtail. Tusk the admortal. What Jumbo made to Jalis, and what Annie set to him. Ophelia's culprit. Here, Humpty Hublin, my old Danch. I am older nor the rogues among wished I slips, and he calls me his jewel of Ayesha. Suppose a ventriloquist marries a corpse. Laps for Finns this funny coon's week. How the buckling shot at Rush in January. Look to the lady, from the rise of the Dutch Republic to the fall of the pot still. Of the two ways of opening the mouth, I have not stopped water where it should flow, and I know the 29 names of Atra Ente. The Torter of Tory Island traits Galasia like his milch cow. From Abbey-gate to Crow Alley, through a lift in the Lude. Smocks for their graces and me aunt for them clodsoppers. How to pull a good horoscope even when old sire is dead to the world. In the gleam of Waterloo, faith he succeeded to my aspiration. These steps forward, 2 stops back. My skin appeals to 3 senses, and my curly lips demand column kisses. Gage Street on a craney's savings. Them lads made a trean of battle watchers, and they totties a doit of deers. In my lord's bed by one whore went through it. Mum, it is all over. Cowboy ride by 12-acre terrace in the unique estates of a Mexican. He gave me a tow, so I serve him with thee. Of all the wide torsos in all the wild glen, O'Donna, white Donna, his hue to me cry. I'm the stitch in his basque side, you'd be naught without Mum, to keep the huskies off the hustings and picture pets from lifting shops. Norska Torska find the puddle. He pursed me here with the ardour of a tonnaburk. A boob was weeping, this mower was reaping. O'Loughlin, up from the pit of my stomach I swish you the white of the morning. Anglo-Andean medaleys from Tominey Moor. The great Polynesian entertainer exhibits Ballantine brochures with the link of nature. The mimic is Meg Neg in the Mackies, entered as the lastest pigtarial and my puridical at Stitchener's Hall, Siegfield Follies, and or a gentleman's faux pas. See the first book of Jealousy's Tessin. The suspended sentence. A pretty brick story for child-sized heroes. As low our sleep. I knew I'd got it in me, so it settles that. Thunderbolt, Captain Smith, and La Belle Sauvage, Pocahontas. Way for wet week Wellikins, Dushka Marianne, the last of the Fingallians. It was me egged him on to the Stock Exchange and lent my dutiful face to his customers. Chi-chi-chils on their China mictions. Picked me up Peters. Lumpty-tum-tumpty had a big fall. Pimp-pimp, pimp-pimp. Measly ventures of 2 lights and the fall of fruit. The folks' family interior. If my spread eagles wasn't so tight, I'd loosen my cursets on that bunch of Maggie straps. Alalosha Popperfest and ho cotch me eye. Seen April's and thin died. I beg you to believe from love and mother. Fine's fault was no felon. Eggs at Delvin rent a life. The flash that flies from Foggy's eyes has set me hair on fire. His is the house that Malt made. Divine views from back to the front. Aid to Serre stood Isaac Newton, till Bram talked him common sex. A nibble at eve will that bowel relieve. All for guineas. Sounds and compliments libidus. 7 wives awake a week. Ariane and Berber Blut. Amy licks porter while Huffy chops heads. A brace of umbellas or a triple of canes. Butter bust. From the Manor Lord Hovid to the Mrs. O'Molleys, and from the dames to their sames. Many festoons for the colleagues on the green. An outstanding back and an excellent half-centre if called on. As tree is quick and stone is white, so is my washing done by night. First and last, only true account. All about the honorary Mersu Erica, LSD, and the snake nuggets, by a woman of the world who only can tell naked truths about a dear man and all his conspirators, how they all tried to fall him, putting it all around Luca Lizard, about Privates Erica and a pair of sloppy sluts, plainly showing all the unmentionability, falsely accusing about the raincoat. The proteiform graph itself is a polyhedron of scripture. There was a time when naive alphabeters would have written it down the tracing of a purely deliquescent recidivist, possibly ambidextrous, snub-nosed probably, and presenting a strangely profound rainbow in his or her occiput. To the hardily curiosing entomophilist, then, it has shown a very sex mosaic of nymphosis, in which the eternal chimera hunter, Oriolopos, now frond of sugars, then leaf of salt, the sensory crowd in his belly, coupled with an eye for the good's truth, bewilder-blissed by their night effluvia, with guns like drums and fondas like forceps, persequestulate his Vanessas from floor to floor. Somehow this sounds like the purest Kiddulion, wherein our Maranatha Roshan of lower lore is rich. All so heru from us him in a kitchen of darkness, by hazard and worn rolls are reared. We must grope on till 0 hour, like poor old jowers as we are, would we salve aught of moments for our eyesore today. A mousen though not but. Closer inspection of the bordereau would reveal a multiplicity of personalities inflicted on the document, and some prevision of virtual crime or crimes might be made by anyone unwary enough before any suitable occasion for it or them had so far managed to happen along. In fact, under the closed eyes of the inspectors, the traits featuring the chiaroscuro coalesce, their contrarieties eliminated, in one stable somebody, similarly as by the providential warring of heart-shaker with housebreaker and of dram-drinker against freethinker, our social something bowls along bumpily, experiencing a jolting series of prearranged disappointments down the long lane of, it's as simple as Oxhouse Humper, generations, more generations, and still more generations. Say, Baron Lassador, who in Hallhagel wrote the darn thing anyhow? Erect, beseated mount-back against a party wall, below freezy grade by the use of quill or style, with turbid or pellucid mind, accompanied or the reverse by mastication, interrupted by visit of seer to scribe or of scribe to cite, atwixt 2 showers or a toss of a trike, rained upon or blown around by a right-down regular racer from the soil, or by a 2-paned whittle-wit, laden with the loot of learning. Now, patience. And remember, patience is the great thing, and above all things else we must avoid anything like being or becoming out of patience. A good plan, used by worried business folk who may not have had many momentums to master Kung's doctrine of the mean, or the propriety codes truths of Capri Mustimus, is just think of all the sinking fund of patience possessed in their conjoint names by both brothers Bruce, with whom are incorporated their Scotch Spider and Elberfell's calculating horses. If after years upon years of delving in ditches dark, one tub-thumper more than others, Kinnihoon or Cahanan, Giardana or mere Miesen-Manager, has got up for the darn all same purpose of reassuring us with all the barber of the Carrigy house that our great ascendant was, properly speaking, 3 syllables less than his own surname. Yes, less. That the ear of Finn Erica aforetime was the trademark of a broadcaster, with wicker, local jargon for an ace's patent. Ear, calls, everywhere. Then, as to this radio-oscillating epi-epistle to which, cotton, silk or samite, coal, gall or brick dust we must ceaselessly return, whereabouts exactly at present, in Siam, Hell or Tophet, under that glory soul which plays touraloop with us in this Aludin's cove of Arcadia city, is that bright so-and-such to slip us the dinkum oil. Naysayers, we know. To conclude, purely negatively from the positive absence of political odia and monetary requests, that its page cannot ever have been a pen product of a man or woman of that period or those parts, is only one more unlooked-for conclusion leapt at, being tantamount to inferring from the non-presence of inverted commas, sometimes called quotation marks, on any page, that its author was always constitutionally incapable of misappropriating the spoken words of others. Luckily, there is another cant to the question. Has any fellow of the dime-a-dozen type, it might with some profit some dull evening quietly be hinted, has any usual sort of ornery josser, flat-chested, 40-ish, faintly flatulent, and given to ratiocination by syncopation and the elucidation of complications, of his greatest Feng-Yang Dinah's descended, only another the son of, in fact, ever looked sufficiently longly at a quite everyday-looking stamped, addressed envelope? Admittedly, it is an outer husk, Its face, in all its featureful perfection of imperfection, is its fortune. It exhibits only the civil or military clothing of whatever passion-pallid nudity or plague-purple nakedness may happen to tuck itself under its flap. Yet, to concentrate solely on the literal sense, or even the psychological content of any document, to the sore neglect of the enveloping facts themselves circumstantiating it, is just as hurtful to sound sense, and let it be added, to the truest taste, as were some fellow in the act of perhaps getting an intro from another fellow, turning out to be a friend in need of his, say, to a lady of the latter's acquaintance, engaged in performing the elaborative ancestral ceremony of upstairs, straight away to run off and vision her, plump and plain in her natural altogether, preferring to close his blinkard's eyes to the ethical fact that she was, after all, wearing for the space of the time being some definite articles of evolutionary clothing, inharmonious creations, a captious critic might describe them as, or not strictly necessary, or a trifle irritating here and there, but for all that, suddenly full of local colour and personal perfume, and suggestive, too, of so very much more, and capable of being stretched, filled out, if need or wish were, of having their surprisingly like coincidental parts separated, don't they now, for better survey by the deft hand of an expert, don't you know? Who in his heart doubts either that the facts of feminine clothing are there all the time, or that the feminine fiction, stranger than the facts, is there also at the same time, only a little to the rear, or that one may be separated from the other, or that both may then be contemplated simultaneously, or that each may be taken up and considered in turn apart from the other. Here let a few artifacts fend in their own favour. The river felt she wanted salt. That was just where Brian came in. The country asked for bear's paw for Din-Din, and bound in, it got it surely. We who live under heaven, we of the clovery kingdom, we middle-sins people, have often watched the sky overreaching the land. We suddenly have. Our isle is saved. The place. That stern chuckler, mayhap he mayhap not, once said to Repetition in that Lucan conservatory way of his, that is it a chapel as it a Lucan was the one place, out nout, in this mad vale of tares, whose verdures yellowed their ever-fatin parks' car, while its tamalized tays the drame of drainophilias, where the possible was the improbable, and the improbable the inevitable. If the proverbial bishop of our holy and undivided, with this me ken or no me ken, that is the quiz tune, havermashed had his toenails on the head, we are in for a sequentiality of improbable possibles, though possibly nobody, after having grubbed up a lock of cold corn above his subject, probably in Aristoteles or the Bible, will go out of his way to applaud him on the unboyast back of his remark, for utterly impossible as are all these events, they are probably as like those which may have taken place as any others which never took person at all are ever likely to be. Ahan. About that original hen. Midwinter, poor or cool was in the offing, and prem-were a promise of April, when as Kisha Bridges sang life's old Sahat song, an ice-clad shiverer, merest of bantling, observed a cold fowl behaviorizing strangely on that fatal midden or chip factory, or comical-bottomed cop's jute, dump for short, afterwards changed into the orangery, when, in the course of deeper demolition, unexpectedly one bushman's holiday, its limon threw up a few spontaneous fragments of orange peel, the last remains of an outdoor meal by some unknown sun-seeker or place-hider illico way back in his mist-ridden past. What child of a strand-looper, but keepy little Kevin, in the despondful surrounding of such sneezing cold, would ever have proved up on a strait that was called street a motive for future sanctity, by euchring the finding of the Ardagh chalice by another highly innocent and beach-walker, whilst trying with pious clamour to wheedle tipper-raw potatoes out of Nausea land, in spite of the patch purple of the massacre, a duel, to die today, goddamn big God sticks and stanks of most of the Jacobiters. The bird in the case was Belinda of the Durham, a more than quinquagenarian, Tertius Prize with Cerny Medal, Sheepilizzi's Hayne Exposition, and what she was scratching at the hour of clocking 12 looked, for all this zigzag world, like a goodish-sized sheet of letter paper, originating by transshipped from Boston, Mass, of the last of the first, to dear, whom it proceeded to mention, Maggie well and all at home's health well, only the hate turned the mild on the Van Houtens, and the General's elections with a lovely face of some born gentleman with a beautiful present of wedding cakes for dear thank you, Christy, and with grand fun for all of poor Father Michael, don't forget unto lights, and Muggy well, how are you, Maggie, and hope soon to hear well, and must now close it, with fondest to the two inns, with 4 cross kisses for Holy Paul, Holy Corner, Holy Polly, Holy Island, P.S. from, locust may eat all, but this sign shall they never, affectionate large-looking tatch of the stain, and that a tea stain, the over-cautalousness of the Master Bilker here, as usual, signing the page away, marked it off on the spout of the moment as a genuine relic of ancient Irish pleasant pottery of that Lydia-like languishing class, known as a haremi or the hazy. Why, then, how? Well, almost any photoist worth his chemicuts will tip anyone asking him the teaser that if a negative of a horse happens to melt enough while drying, well, what you do get is, well, a positively, grotesquely distorted macro mass of all sorts of horse-happy values and masses of melt-while horse. Tip. Well, this, freely, is what must have occurred to our missus. There's a sod of a turb for you, please wisp off the grass. Unfilched from the voucher by the sagacity of a look-me-little-like-me-long hen. Heated residence in the heart of the orange-flavoured mud mound had partly obliterated the negative to start with, causing some features palpably nearer your pecker to be swollen up most grossly, while the farther back we managed to wiggle, the more we need the loan of a lens to see as much as the hen saw. Tip. You is feeling like you was lost in the bush, boy. You says it is a puling sample jungle of woods. You most shouts out, bethicket me for a stump of a beach if I had the paltriest notions what the Pharisee all means. Gee up, girlie. The quad gospelers may own the Targum, but any of the Zingari Shulerim may pick a peck of kindlings yet from the sack of old hen sign. Lead, kindly fowl. They always did, ask the ages. What bird has done yesterday, man may do next year. Be it fly, be it molt, be it hatch, be it agreement in the nest. For her socio-scientific sense is sound as a bell, sir. Her volacrine automutativeness right on normalcy. She knows, she just feels she was kind of born to lay and love eggs. Trust her to propagate the species and whoosh her fluff balls safe through din and danger. Lastly but mostly, in her genetic field, it is all game and no gammon. She is ladylike in everything she does, and plays the gentleman's part every time. Let us offspit it. Yes, before all this has time to end, the golden age must return with its vengeance. Man will become dirigible. Ague will be rejuvenated. Woman, with her ridiculous white burden, will reach by one step sublime incubation. The main-wanting human lioness, with her dishorned discipular man-ram, will lie down together publicly, flank upon fleece. No, assuredly they are not justified, those gloom-pourers who grouse that letters have never been quite their old selves again, since that weird weekday in bleak Janvier, yet how palmy date in a waste's oasis, when to the shock of both, Biddy Doran looked at literature. And she may be a mere Marcella, this midget majesty, mistress of art. But it is not a hear or say of some anomalous letter, signed Toga Gerilis T.C. dear. We have a cop of her fist right against our nosy box. We note the paper with her jotty young watermark, Notre Dame du Bon Marché. And she has a heart of iron. What loomy lilts as she falls with her fallimin ears and her Nadia nods, as a strow will show she does the wind blag, recting to show the rudess of a rober curling, and showing the fancitize of a frisette. But how many of her readers realize that she is not out to dizzle-dazzle with the great uncoutrement of post-Mantuam glossaries from the Latins and the Greeks? Nothing's on her wild life. Grabar good and grande for old Armenian etymologists, like Daria Morius and Zovo Trimazarov Marav Maruvian. She feel plain plate one flat fact thing, and if last ways first wise, a man alone's seen any on anyone's others has no rates to don a kick at with any on anakars about 2-2s milking 4s, and the rears on the outer end assicking the 2-2s to be forward off. Thing crooklieks in every pasture 6-6 likens him around hers, the magaby kin can with don't mind looking at it. Mesdames, Mademoiselle, Messieurs, s'il va plaît, or Schwan, writes, ich tell the cock's truth about him. Cap hack capuk, no minces matter. He had to see life foully, the plaque and the smoke, writes. There were 3 men in him, writes. Dancing, writes, was his only 2 feebles, with apple harlots and little mollfogels, specially, writes, when they peaches. Anis war camellia pen. Yours very truthful, ad dappling. Yet is it but an old story, the tale of a tree stone with one is old, of a man's held by tent pegs and his pal Waterloost on the run. What cadman could, but bad man wouldn't. Any Genoa man against any Venice, and why Kate takes charge of the waxworks. Let us now, whether health, dangers, public orders, and other circumstances permitting, of perfectly convenient, if you police, after you, police, pardoning mine, ich bin so fresh, bay, drop this jiggery pokery, and talk straight turkey meat to mate, for while the ear, be we Michaels or Nicholas, may sometimes be inclined to believe others, the eye, whether browned or no lens, find it devilish hard now and again even to believe itself. Habes ores et num videbis, habes oculos, ac mane palpabuat. Drawing nearer to take our slant at it, since after all it has met with misfortune while all underground, let us see all there may remain to be seen. I am a worker, a tombstone mason, anxious to please everybody's, and jolly glad when Christmas comes is once a year. You are a poor Joyce, unctuous to police no bobbies, and tunny belly solely when 'tis time to go home again. We cannot say eye to eye. We cannot smile nose from nose. Still, one cannot help noticing that rather more than half of the lines run north-south in the Nempthys and Bucharest directions, while the others go west-east, in search from Malazias with Bulgarad for tiny tots, though it looks, when Shopnistling alongside other incunabula. It has its cardinal points for all that. These ruled barriers along which the traced words run, march, halt, walk, stumble at doubtful points, stumble up again in comparative safety, seem to have been drawn first of all in a pretty checker with lamp black and blackthorn. Such crossing is anti-Christian, of course, but the use of the home-born shillelagh as an aid to calligraphy shows a distinct advance from savagery to barbarism. It is seriously believed by some that the intention may have been geodetic, or in the view of the cannier, domestic economical. But by writing ditherways end to end, and turning and end to end hitherways writing, and with lines of litters slittering up and louds of ladders slettering down, the old semi to my place and jup it back again, from Thamlet rise till Homlet sleep, where in the waste is the wisdom. Another point. In addition to the original sand, pounce powder, drunkard paper, or soft rag used, any veteran hanger in our soft social can see the scene for himself, a wee tofty odd rum, the cheery spluttered on the one carrig, a darker sheen of booze from Dalbania, any God's quantity of raki, a Portugal and some buck sitting out on the sofa, You remember the sort of softball soccer motto used to tell us when we were all biribias or nippies and masses? It has acquired accretions of tertious matter whilst loitering in the past. The tea-time stained terminal, say not the tag, mummer, or our shows of failure, is a cosy little brown study all to oneself, and whether it be thumbprint, maid mark, or just a portrait of the artless, its importance in establishing the identities in the writer complexes. For if the hand was one, the minds of active and agitated were more than so, will be best appreciated by never forgetting that both before and after the Battle of the Boyne, it was a habit not to sign letters always. Tip. And it is surely a lesser ignorance to write a word with every consonant too few than to add all too many. The end? Say it with missiles, then, and thus arabesque the page. You have your cup of scalding souchong, your taper's waxen drop, your cat's paw, the clove or coffin nail you chewed or champed as you worded it, your lark and clear air. So why, pray, sign anything, as long as every word, letter, pen stroke, paper space is a perfect signature of its own? A true friend is known much more easily, and better into the bargain, by his personal touch, habits of full or undress, movement, response to appeals for charity, than by his footwear, say. And speaking anent Tiberius and other incestuous salacities among gerontophils, a word of warning about the tender-loined passion hinted at. Some soft-nosed peruser might mayhem take it up erogenously, as the usual case of spoons, prostituta in herba, plus stinky pinks deliberatively somersaulting off her bisexical at the main entrance of curate's perpetual suit-and suit, with her 1-2-C and a woe, who picks her up as gingerly as any balm-bearer would to feel whereupon the Virgin was most hurt, and nicely asking, "Where have you been so grace-a-mauling? And where were you chased, me child? Be who, Father Potential?" And so wider, but we grisly old psychos, who have done our unsmiling bit on Alice's when they were young and easily frightened, in the penumbra of the procuring room, and what oracular compression we have had applied to them, did we care to sell our fee-bought silence in camera, tell our very moist-nostrilled one that father, in such variegated contexts, is not always that undemonstrative relative, often held up to our contumacy, who settles our hash bill for us, and what an innocent all-abroad's adverb such as mically looks like can be suggestive of under the pudendoscope. And finally, what a neurasthene nympholept endocrine pineal typus of inverted parentage with a prepossessing drama present in her past and a priapic urge for congress with agnates before cognates fundamentally is feeling for under her lubricitous meiosis when she refers with liking to some feeler she fancies takes. And, we could, yet what need to say? 'Tis as human a little story as paper could well carry, in affect, as Sing Sing so Salomon so suing to swit victuals, while as unbluffingly blur to brusque blunt as an Ezra, the cat's meter, the meter's cat's wife, the meter's cat's wife's half-better, the meter's cat's wife's half-better's meter, and so back to our horses, for we also know what we have perused from the pages of I Was a General, that shouting up of Bulsklivism by Schottenboom, that Father Michael, about this red time of the White Terror, equals the old regime, and Margaret is the social revolution, while cakes mean the party funds, and dear thank you signifies national gratitude. In fine, we have heard, as it happened, of Spartacus Intercellular. We are not cocknered yet, dead hand. We can recall with volunteers the froggy Jew, and sweeter far 'twere now we thinks in Dumble's fair city ere one more year is o'er. We turned our coasts to the good gay tune, when from down swords the sea merged the old oath guns, and answer made the bull O'Dwyer. But est modest in verbal, Let a prostitute be whoso stands before a door and winks, or parks herself in the fornix near a maketh-in wall, sin, and the curate one who brings strong waters, gin, but also, and dinna forget, that there is many a sleep between some at homes first, and more in Auslands last, and that the beautiful presence of waiting cates will until life be more than enough to make any milk-mike in the language of sweet tarts punch hell's hate into his twin Nicky, and that Maggie's tea, or your majesty, if heard as a boost from a born gentleman, is. For if the lingo gasped between tick sheets, however basically English, were to be preached from the mouths of wicker church wardens and metaphysicians in the row and advocatos, all voyous, demi-voyeurs, langoths, lesbials, dantels, gutter howls and farts, where would their practice be, or where the human race itself, were the Pythagorean sesquipedalia of the Panepistemion, however apically Volapukki, grunted and gromwelled, Ichabod, Habakkuk, Opanoff, Ogamig, Hapaxel, Gomenon, over country stiles, behind slated dwelling houses, down blind lanes, or, when all fruit fails, under some stacking left on a coarse cock. So hath been love, 'tis, and will be, till wears and tears and ages. Thiefest the night, steal we the air, shawl thiner leafest mine. Hear, oh hear, insult the fair, traitor, bad hearer, brave. The lightning look, the birding cry, awe from the grave, ever flowing on the time. Foy Ragazaria, yord and water, now godson shine on Mende's daughter. A good clap afore marriage, a bad wake, tell hell's well. Such is man a wife's lot of lose and win again, till he's grown whiskers on whose chin again. She plucketed them out, but they grown in again. So what are you going to do about it? Oh dear. If Junas she say, ah-ho, and if Yulon he poo, the all stole yolum. From Kikikine to Mishmishile, and a Jean-Baptiste to a Brulo. It is told in sounds, in utter that, in signs, so adds to, in universal, in polyglotteral, in each auxiliary neutral idiom, sordomutics, lorilingua, shelter focal, flay flutter, a cons cubane, a prose to cute, strass Arab, air Perse, and any tongue at all. Since not sinanet, tripped palmy ways with hi-ho Harry, there's a spurt-fired turf a kind of kindling, when oft as the soof blows her peaties up, and a clay pot wet for thee, my stisses, and talk a till Tibbs has ease. And what though, revelous life proving aye the death of Ronaldses, when wind-power wine has bucked the kick on poor one man, biliousness has been biliousness during millions of millenniums, and our mixed racings have been giving 2 hoots or 3 jeers for the grape, vine and brew, and Peter's in New Amsterdam, and Pauli's where the pools go, and rum smelt his end for him, and he dined off sooth American. It would give one the friar even were one a normal kettle liquor. This old world epistola of their weatherings and their marryings and their buryings and their natural selections has tumbled down to us first and made it all ours, like an old cup and tay. As I was hotting me southward, ha-ha, and as you was called in your duchy hovel, ho-ho, she told the tailor her tune. Hoo-hoo. Now, capnemancy and infusionism may both fit as tight as 2 privets, but while we in our wee free state, holding to that pre-statute in our charter, may have our irremovable doubts as to the whole sense of the law, the interpretation of any phrase in the whole, the meaning of every word of a phrase so far deciphered out of it, however unfettered our Irish daily independence, we must vaunt no idle dubiosity as to its genuine authorship and holus bolus authoritativeness. And let us bring these cease to beakerings on that clink, Ormond Botlow. On the face of it, to volt back to our desultory horses, and to your roughshod mind, battle-lost bull, the affair is a thing once for all done, and there you are, somewhere, and finished in a certain time. be it a day or a year, or even supposing it should eventually turn out to be a serial number of goodness gracious alone knows how many days or years. Anyhow, somehow and somewhere, before the book flood or after her ebb, somebody mentioned by name in his telephone directory, Coccolanius or Gallo-Taurus, wrote it all down, and there you are, full stop. Oh, undoubtedly, yes, and very portably so, but one who deeper thinks will always bear in the back buckus of his mind that this downright there you are and there it is only all in his eye. Why? Because, suffer him, Babel, if it goes to that. And dormer window gossip will cry it from the housetops no surelier than the writing on the wall will hew it to the mod of men that mote in the main street, every person, place, and thing in the chaosmos of all, anyway connected with the gobbly-dumped Turkery, was moving and changing every part of the time. The travelling inkhorn, possibly pot, the hare and turtle pen and paper, the continually more and less inter-misunderstanding minds of the anti-collaborators, the as time went on, as it will, variously inflected, differently pronounced, otherwise spelled, changeably meaning vocable script signs. No, so harp me peto. It is not a miseffectual hyacinthonous riot of blots and blurs and bars and balls and hoops and wriggles and juxtaposed jottings linked by spurts of speed. It only looks as like it as damn it, and sure we ought really to rest thankful that at this delectful hour of dung-flies dawning we have even a written-on with dried ink scrap of paper at all to show for ourselves, tear it or leave it, and we are lufted to ourselves as the soul-fisher when he led the cat out of the bout, after all that we lost and plundered of it, even to the hidmost coinings of the earth, and all it has gone through, and by all means, after a good ground kiss to terra casa, and for war's luck our left-offs flung over our home homoplate, cling to it as with drowning hands, hoping against hope all the while that by the light of philosophy, and may she never forstage us, things will begin to clear up a bit one way or another within the next quarrel of an hour, and be hanged to them as 10 to 1 they will to, please the pigs, as they ought to, categorically, as strictly between ourselves. There is a limit to all things, so this will never do. For with that farm-frow's foul flare for that flayful fox-beater, the calamites calumitas calling for calamitous calamities, who that scrutinizing marvels at those indignant whip-loop lashes, those so prudently bolted or blocked rounds, the touching reminiscence of an incompleted trail or dropped final, a round thousand whirligig glorioles prefaced by, alas, now illegible airy plume flight, all Tiberiously ambi-embellishing the initials majuscule of Erica, the meant to be baffling Chrismon trilithon sign, E, narrator's note, capital E turned 90 degrees to the right, end of narrator's note, finally called after some hesitancy, heck, which, moved contra-watchwise, represents his title in Sigla as the smaller, capital Delta, frontly called following a certain change of state of grace of nature, A.L.P or Delta, when single, stands for or tautologically stands beside the consort. Though for that matter, since we have heard from Cathay circles how the hen is not merely a tick or two after the 1st, 5th, 4th of the 2nd, 8th, 12th, Xiang Chang Hong Kong Sanchener, but yearly the other, and 30th of the 9th from the 20th, our own vulgar 432 and 1132 irrespectively. Why not take the former for a village inn, the latter for an upside-down bridge, a multiplication marking for crossroads ahead, which you like pothook for the family gibbet, their old four-wheedler for the Bucker's field, a tea anyway for a tryst someday, and his one side missing for an all-blind alley leading to an Irish plot in the Champ de Mars. Not? The steady monologi of the interiors, the pardonable confusion for which some blame the cudgel and more blame the soot, but unthanks to which the peas with their caps awry are quite as often as not taken for cues with their tails in there, or are quite as often as not taken for pews with their tails in their mouths. Thence your Christopher Columbos, hence our cat Presbyterians. The curt witty-watty dashes never quite just right at the trim, trite truth letter. The sudden spluttered petulance of some capitalized middle, a word as cunningly hidden in its maze of confused drapery as a field mouse in a nest of coloured ribbons. That absurdly bull-footed bee declaring with an even plainer dumb show than does the mute commoner with us how hard a thing it is to be born a gentler man. And look at this pre-pronominal fun for all, engraved and retouched and edge-wiped and pudding-padded, very like a whale's egg fast with pemmican, as were its sentenced to be nuzzled over a full trillion times forever and a night, till his noddles sink or swim by that ideal reader suffering from an ideal insomnia. All those red-rabbled oboli, cayenne pepper-cast over the text, calling unnecessary attention to errors, omissions, repetitions, and misalignments. That probably local or personal variant maggers for the more generally accepted majesty, which is but a trifle and yet may quietly amuse. Those supercilious-looking, criss-crossed Greek E's, awkward like perched there and here, out of date like sick owls hawked back to Athens. And the GG's, too, Jesuistically formed at first, but afterwards genuflected angrily towards the Occident. The Ostrogothic cacography, affected to certain phrases of Etruscan stable talk, and, in short, the learning betrayed at almost every line's end. The head strength, at least 11 men of 32 palfrey craft, revealed by a constant labour to make a gimel pass through the eye of an iota. This, for instance, utterly unexpected sinistro-gyric return to one peculiar sore point in the past, those thrown-open W's of an early muddy Turanian origin, whether man chooses to damn them agglutinatively, lu tu blu facek, or il vous dopi hole, or Kant's Kurz Toppelfouls, seated with such flop-right-down determination and reminding Earth ineluctably of nature at her naturalist, while that fretful fidget F, the hornful digamma of your born a barbar, rarely heard now save when falling from the unfashionable lips of some heterosexual, used always in two bold-faced print types, one of them as wrong-headed as his Claudian brother, is it worthwhile interrupting to say, throughout the papyrus as the revise mark, stalks all over the page, broods, capital F upside down facing left, sensation seeking an idea amid the verbiage, gaunt, stands dejectedly in the diapered window margin, with its basque of bay leaves all aflutter about its forked frogs, paces with a frown, jerking to and fro, flinging phrases here, there, or returns inhibited with some half-halted suggestion, capital F upside down facing right, dragging its shoestring, the curious warning sign before our proto-parents ipsissima verba, a very pure nondescript, by the way, sometimes a palm-tailed otter, more often the arbutus fruit-flower leaf of the cane apple, which paleographers call a leak in the thatch, or the Arran man inker whisk through the hole of his hat, indicating that the words which follow may be taken in any order desired. Hole of Arran man the hat through the whispering his hoe, here, keen again and begin again to make sound sense and sense sound kin again. Those haughty-pitched, dis-dotted H's, easily of the rarest, in as droll as most of the jaywalking I's we do plough into have, unconnected, principial, medial or final, always Jims in the jam, sahib, as pipless as threadworms. The innocent exhibitionism of those frank yet capricious underlinings, that strange exotic serpentine, since so properly banished from our scripture, about as frequing a wetter hand now as to see a right-headed lady white Donacork horse, which, in its invincible insolence, ever longer more and of more morosity, seems to uncoil spirally and swell lacertine lazily before our eyes under pressure of the writer's hand. The ungainly musicianlessness, so painted in sculpting self-sounder, aha, as black artful as a podatus, and dumbfounder, oh-ho, oprorios, as 10 cannons in skelterfuge. The studious omission of year number and era name from the date, the one and only time when our copyist seems at least to have grasped the beauty of restraint, the lubricitous conjugation of the last with the first, the gypsy mating of a grand, stylish grave-digging with second-best buns, an interpolation. These munchables occur only in the Butterbroth family of manuscripts BB-Cod 4, Pap 2, Breck 11, Lun 3, Din 17, Sup 30, Full Up 1690. The scholiast has hungrily misheard a dead man's tola as a muffin bell. The foreshortened ampersands under which we can glimpse at and feel for ourselves across all those rush years, the warm, soft, short pants of the quick scribbler, the vocative lapse from which it begins, and the accusative hole in which it ends itself, the aphasia of that heroic agony of recalling a once-loved number, leading slip by slipper to a general amnesia of misnomering one's own. Next, those R's, those R's all bellical, the high priest's hieroglyph of Kettle Tom and Odds Bones, rasted red-handedly from our hallowed rubric prayer for truce with booty, Oremus pro Romulo, and rudely from the fane's pinnacle tossed down by Porter to within an aim's ace of their quatrain of ruby jets, among those who arse without the temple, nor since Rose distillery burned, have quaffed night's fire-filled cup, but jig-jog-jug as day the dice-box throws, whang, loyal six I lead, out wi' your heart's blood, blast ye, and there she's for you, sir, whang her, the fine woman, rouge to her lobster locks, the Rossi, whang, God, and O'Mara has it with his ruddy old villain Rufus, wait, whang, God, and you're another he hasn't, for there's my spoiled 5 of Spuds's trumps, whang, whack on his pigsking's kisser for him, K.M. O'Mara, where are you? Then, coming over to the left aisle, corner down, the cruciform postscript, from which 3 basia, or shorter and smaller oscula, have been over-carefully scraped away, plainly inspiring the tenebrous Tunk page of the Book of Kells. And then it need not be lost sight of that there are exactly 3 squads of candidates for the Crucian Rose awaiting their turn in the marginal panels of Column Killer, chugged in their 3 ballot boxes, then set apart for such hanging committees, where 2 was enough for anyone, starting with old Matthew himself, as he with great distinction said then, just as since then people speaking have fallen into the custom, when speaking to a person, of saying 2 is company, when the 3rd person is the person darkly spoken of, and then that last labio-lingual basium might be read as a suavium, if whoever the embracer then was wrote with a tongue in his, or perhaps her, cheek, as the case may have been then. And the fatal droop-a-dwindle slope of the blame scroll, the sure sign of imperfectible moral blindness, the too-muchness, the far-too-manyness of all those 4-legged M's, and why spell, dear God, with a big, thick G? Why, oh why, oh why, the cut-and-dry axe-and-wise form of the semi-final, and 18thly or 24thly, but at least thank Morris lastly when all is said and done, the Penelopean patience of its last para, a colophon of no fewer than 732 strokes, tailed by a leaping lasso, who thus at all this marvelling, but will press on hotly to see the vaulting feminine libido of those interbranching sex opponin suites, sternly controlled and easily repersuaded by the uniform matter-of-factness of a meandering male fist. Duff Mugley, who now may be quoted by very kind arrangement, his dextroscophonious photosensation under suprasonic light control may be logged for by our none-too-distant futures as soon as stone values can be turned out from Chromophilamos Limited at a millisentime the microamp, first called this kind of Padigoeasy partnership the Eurychian, or tetrachiric, or quadrumane, or ducks and drakes, or debts and dishes perplex. Vide some forestallings over that studium of sexophonologistic schizophrenesis, volume 24, pages 2 to 555, after the well-informed observation, made miles apart from the master, by tongue-toyed, compare later frustrations amongst the neo-Muglian teachings abaft the semi-unconscious passim, that in the case of the little-known periplic bestseller popularly associated with the names of the wretched mariner, triumpher and deaf-weed off our plum-sucked pattern shapekeeper, a Punic Admiralty report from Macpherson's Ocean, round by the tides of Jason's cruise, had been cleverly capsized and saucily republished as a Dodechanesian Baedeker of the every tale a treat in itself variety, which could hope satisfactorily to tickle me gander as game as your goose. The unmistaken identity of the persons in the Tiberiast duplex came to light in the most devious of ways. The original document was in what is known as anno or non-anno's unbrookable strip, that is to say, it showed no signs of punctuation of any sort. Yet, on holding the verso against a lit rush, this new book of Morses responded most remarkably to the silent query of our world's oldest light, and its recto let out the piquant fact that it was but pierced but not punctured, in the university sense of the term, by numerous stabs and foliated gashes made by a pronged instrument. These paper wounds, 4 in type, were gradually and correctly understood to mean stop, please stop, do please stop, and oh do please stop, respectively, and following up their one true clue, the circumflexuous wall of a single-minded men's asylum, accentuated by bits of broken glass and china, yard inquiries pointed out that they had been provoked by the talk of a grave professor at his breakfast table, acutely professionally piqued to introduce a notion of time upon a plane surface by puncturing holes thick in his space. Deeply religious by nature and position, and warmly attached to thee and Smearbread and Better and him and new ladies, it was rightly suspected that such ire could not have been visited by him, Brotfresser Prendergast, even underwittingly upon the ancestral pneuma of one whom, with rumour, he venerated shamelessly at least once a week at Cockspur Common as his apple in his eye and her first boy's best friend, and though plain English for a married lady misled heaps by the way, yet when some peerer or peeress detected that the four-leafed shamrock or quadrifoil jab was more recurrent, wherever the script was clear and the term terse, and that these two were the self-same spots naturally selected for her perforations by Dame Partlet on her dung-heap, thinkers all put grown in watering spilful pretty land only, and a playful foul and musical me, and not you in any case, 2 and 2 together, and with a swarm of bisses honey hunting after, a sigh for shame, or the petty bonny rouge, separated modest mouths. So be it, and it was. The letter-making of the ex-lot of Bjorn Carlson when he was in the Kvinnes country with Dolrusnet. With acknowledgment of our fervour of the first instant, he remains years most faithfully for post-scrapped sea spoils, though not yet had the sailor sipped that stuff, nor the humper foamed to the fill. And fox and geese still kept the peace around l'auberge du Père Adam. Small need after that, old Jerome, so them old Huff-Snuff, old Andy Cox, old Cassandrum, for quizzing your weekenders come to the RQ with, shoots off in a hiss, muddles up in a mustache, and his hole's a dismantled noon-drunkard's son. Howbeit, we heard not a son of sons to leave by him to oceanic society, and his old man, without a thing in his ignorance, Tulko McCooley. And it was thus he was at every time, that son, and the other time the day was in it, and after the morrow dire mood, is the name is on the writing chap of the Psalter, the juxta-junctor of a dear mate, and he passing out of one desire into its fellow. The daughters are after going and nooging for him, Torbers, nice lookers of the fair neck, wanted for millinery servants to alter his person by the Toffy Atkinses, formally confounded with a mother. Maybe growing a moustache, did you say, with an adorable look of amusement, and uses no-class billiard halls with an up-and-down ladder? Not Hans the courier, though had he have only had some little laughings and some less of cheeks, and were he not so worried by his bulb of persecution, he could have, aye, and would have, as true as Essex Bridge. And not go fef go gossip, I declare to man. No, to all's much relief, one's half-hypothesis of that jabberjaw ape amok the showering chestnuts of Brusenose was hotly dropped, and his room taken up by that odious, and still today insufficiently mal-estimated note-snatcher, Kak foy boshen fiety much earny goss put in, says you. Shem the penman. So, Who do you know tonight, ladies and gentlemen? The echo is where in the back of the woods. Call him forth. Sean McIrewick, brief dragger for the concern of Messrs. John Jameson and Song, rated 100 thin per store 100 on this nightly quisqui-quack of the 12 apostrophes set by Jockett Mick Airwick. He misunderstruck and aimed for Amalo of number 3 of them, and left his free natural riposte to 4 of them in their own fine artful disorder. 1. What second to none myth erector and maximost bridges maker was the first to rise taller through his bean's tail than the blue gum boa boa babon or the giganteous Wellingtonia sequoia, who went nudie boots with trousers into a Lafayette when she was barely in her tricklies, was well known to claw a conciliation cap onto the esker of his hood, sports a chain-ganger's Albert solemnly over his Hollander's epaulet, thought he weighed a new ton when there fell his first lap-apple, gave the heinousness of choice to every night betwixt yesterdicks and two merries, had 7 all successive coloured seraban maids on the same big white drawing-room hearthrug, is a Wilberforce to this hour at house as he was in heaven, pumped the Catholic war tray and shocked the Protestant boyne, killed his own Hungary self in anger as a young man, found fodder for 5 when all Mark and Rose go flooded, with Irish tutors, Cornish made easy, voucher of rotables, toll of the road, bred many-headed stepsons for one leap your own torter, is too funny for a fish and has too many outside for an insect, like a heptagon crystal emprisons truths and phosphorus, is infinite swell in unfitting indument. Once was he shovelled, and once was he arsoned, and once was he an underd, and she hung him out Bill Bailey, has a quadrant in his tile to tell Toller Caraclock it is, offers chances to long on, but stands up to leg before, found coal at the end of his harrow and moss roses behind the seams, made a fort out of his postern, and wrote F-E-R-T on his buckler, is escape master-in-chief from all sorts of Houdin places. If he out-Harrods against Barkers, to the sure-bred he acts whitely, was evacuated at the mere appearance of 3 germ huns, and twice besieged by a sweep. From zoomorphology to omni-animalism he is broached by the spin of a coin. Towers an Eddystone amid the lampless, casting swan beams on the deep. Threatens thunder upon malefactors and sends whispers up frou-frou's frou-frou. When Duke Hookback Crook upsits his ass, booze-worthies jeer and junket, but they booze him ooze and bars his ass when he looks like Hunket Plunket. By so's and so's and search a party on a lady of this city. Business, reading newspaper, smoking cigar, arranging tumblers on table, eating meals, pleasure, etc., etc., pleasure, eating meals, arranging tumblers on table, smoking cigar, reading newspaper, business. Minerals, wash and brush up, local views, juju toffee, comic and birthdays cards. Those were the days, and he was their hero. Pink sunset shower, red clay cloud, sorrow or Sahara oxhide or iron. Arraigned and attainted, listed and lighted, pleaded and proved. Catches his check at Bank of England and endorses his doom at chapel exit. Brain of the Franks, hand of the Christian, tongue of the North. Commands to dinner and calls the bluff. Has a block at Morgan's and a headache all the after lunch. Plays Geheimrat when he's ernst, but Mrs. Mousy when he's lustig. Walked as far as the head, where he sat in state as the rump. Shows early English trace marks on a marigold window with many gilt lights, a myrioscope, 2 remarkable piscines, and 3 well worth seeing ambries. Arches all portcullis, and his nave dates from Dot. Is a horologe unstoppable and the bane of all bells. Fuit, ist, and herit, and though he's mildew-stained, he's mouldy stone. Is a quercus in the forest, but plain member for megalopolis. Mountain mighty, fawn on Fleetfoot. Plank in our platform, blank in our sculpture. Hid all in carucates he is enumerated, hold as an earl he cuts. Ship-shaped praise of bug-looking words, with a form like the easing moments of a graminivorous. To our dooms brought he law, our manoirs he made his will of. Was an overgrind to the underground, an aqueduct for fiery throats. Sends boys in socks a coffer hooping, when he lets forth his carbon oxide, and silk stockings show her shapings when he looses hose on hers. Stocks dry powder for the ill people, and Finnegans pellets for all the pale. Gave his Monday foot to Miserius, her pinch to Anna Livia, that superfine pigtail to Cereza Serosia, and Quidrides to Titius Caius and Sempronius. Made the man, who had no notion of shopkeepers, feel he'd rather play the duke than play the gentleman. Shot 2 queens and shook 3 castles when he won his game of dwarf. Fumes inwards like a strombolus till he smokes at both ends. Man mote be fire of him, womankind pietat. Shows one white drift of snow among the gorse growth of his crown, and a chaperone of repentance on that which shed gore. Pause and quiet. Triple Bill went by metro for the polis, and then hoved by. To the finders, hail! Woe, you that seek, whom filth had plenished, dearth devoured. Hawk is leading, Coco comes next, Emery tries for the flag. Can dance the O'Bruin's polar pants at Newland to his own orchestra's accompaniment. Took place before the International Convention of Catholic Midwives, and found stead before the Congress for the study of endonational calamities. Makes a delictuous entree, and finishes off the course between sweets and savouries. Flouts for forecasts, flares for fines, and the fun of the fray on the fairground. Cleared out 365 idols to set up one colossal for henwives, hoping to have males. The floor hula, the grasping one, the kindler of paschal fire, forbids us our trespasses as we forget him. The phoenix be his pyre, the cinerers his sire. Piles big Pelium on little altars, like the pillars of Hercules. Has an Oedipus complex, and a drink the dregs kink. Worst beaks for chumps and cow carlos for scullions. When he plies for our favour is very truly ours. 2 psychic espousals and 3 desertions. May be matter of fact now, but was futter of magged then. Cattermole Hill, ex-mountain of flesh, was reared up by stress and sank under strain. Tank it up, dank it up, tells the tailor to his tout. En tout cas for a man, but bitter thimble for a maid. Blimp, blump, a dud letter, a sing-a-song, a syllable, a byword, a sentence with thirsty. While stands his can you see him, frails shall fall. Was hatched at Selbridge, but ejaculated a brood, as it gan in the beginnings, so wound up in a battle of Boss. Roderick, Roderick, Roderick-o, you've gone the way of the Danes. Variously catalogued, regularly regrouped. A bush boy's holiday, a quacker's mating, a wench's sandbath. The same homo heatherus check-in-lot egg as when Solii early blew ye. Real detonation, but false report. Spa mad, but insane. 500,000 by a bogus census, but a no-street houseman when all fanned. Is the handiest of all Andes, and the most elegant spot to dump your hump. Hands his secession to the new patrician, but plums phlegmatically for the bloody old centuries. Eats with doors open and ruts with gates closed. Some dub him Rothschild, and more limb him Rockefeller. Shows he's fly to both demispheres, but tries to cover up his tracer. 7 dovecots who claim to have been pigeon-heimed to this Homer. Smyrnian, Roebuck, Colonsray, Sea Point, Quixote, Ashtown, Racine. Independent of the lordship of Chamberlain, acknowledging the rule of Rome, we saw thy farm at useful Prine, Donald, Donald. Reeks like Il Bel Paese, and looks like Iceland's ear. Lodged at what places, lived through tot rain. Takes a sunbath for his weekend, and a wasser nap for his refreshment. After a good bout at stool ball, enjoys girofee girofla, what nevermore missed and Colombo found. Believes in every man his own gold-keeper, and in Africa for the full blacks. The arc of his drive was 40 full, and his stumps were pulled at 80. Boasts him to the Thickens Hughes, the oldest creator in Ariania, and looks down on the Swiss family Collisons, whom he calls Les Nouvelles Roches. Though his heart, soul, and spirit turn to fair-off times, his love, faith, and hope stick to futurism. Light leg-lifters sense him Suriant from afore, while Boer browbenders curse him grommelant to his hindmost. Between you lasses and ye lads glimpse of even. The lug his peak has, the luck his pile. drinks tar and water for his asthma, and eats the unperishable sow to stave off regular rack. The beggars cloak them reclined about his paddy stool, the whores winking him as they walked their side. On Christian Mass at Advent Lodge, New Zealand, after a lengthy illness, the Reverend Mr. Easterling of Pentecostitis, no followers by bequest, fanfare all private. Gone where glory waits him, ball bulletin. But not here yet, Maxwell, thought. Comingst under articles, but finished a Borgias. From the vat on the beer, through the burr in the dark, to the bottle of the Bourne. Is A1 on the highest, but Rory his root. Phil fand of hackleberries, when as all was tuck and toss up for him as a youngster to fall foul of Hockenbechers, wherein he had gauged the use of raisin. Adds aliments, das dolls, rats rustics, Tham's turmoil. That's seed enough for semination, but Sue's skivvies on the sly. Learned to speak from hand to mouth till he could talk Irish with his eyes shut, hacked his way through hick-hick-hocks, but hanged himself from there hereafter. Rialtos, Annisleg, bin and balls, to say nothing at all of new coming. The gleam of the glow of the shine of the sun through the dearth of the dearth on the blush of the brick of the viled vill of Barneyhume has dust turned to brown. Those died to tartan him, rue-root, dulce, bracken, teasel, full as ash, sundew and cress. Long gone, but not forgotten, stood his sharp assault of famine, but grew girther and girther. He has 24 or so cousins germinating in the United States of America, and a namesake with an initial difference in the once kingdom of Poland. His first's a young rose, and his second's French-Egyptian, and his whole means a slump at Christie. Forth of his pierced part came the woman of his dreams, blood thicker than water last trade overseas. Bishop of Glintyluke, Jarl of Hode, you and I are in him surrendered by Brunglud. Ellen's free Paul's perhaps, but Wang Chang every time. He one was your of high big pipey boys, but fancy him a smoking fags his at time of life. Mount of Mish, Mel of Moy, had 2 cardinal ventures and 3 capital things. Has a peep in his pocketbook and a packet boat in his keep. BVH, BLG, PPM, TDS, VBD, TCH, LON. Is breakfast, lunger, diner, and super. As the streets were paved with coal, he felt his toperary. Taught himself skating and learned how to fall. Distinctly dirty, but rather a dear. Hoveth chieftains everywhere, with mordor. Ostman Effendi, Serge Padishaw. Basses too many. Out Priam's all his parasites. First of the Fenians, Roi de Fainéant. His tiara of scones was held unfillable, till one Liam Fail felled him in Westminster, was struck out of his stidham when he rode solely to Damascus, and to our appalling predicament brought us plagues from Budapest. Put a match head on an aspen stalk, and set the living afire. Spared the rod and spoiled the lightning, married with cakes and repunct with pleasure, till he was buried, how happy was he, and he made the welkins ring with up Micawber. God at the top of the staircase, carrion on the mat of straw. The falsehood of a spindler web chokes the cave mouth of his unsightliness, but the nestlings that liven his leaf screen sing him a lover of our beauty. We strike hands over his bloodied war-sheet, but we are pledged entirely to his green mantle. Our friend Vicalegal, our sworn foe. Under the 4 stones by his streams who vanished the wassail bowl of the joy of shells. Mora and Laura had a hill of a high time looking down on his confusion, till firm look in readiness, forward spear, and the wind foot of a currach strewed the lake mist of Lego over the last of his seals. We darkened for you, falterer, in the year of morning, but we'll feel to the dim twinklers when the streamy Morven light calls up the sunbeam. His striped pantaloons, his rather strange walk, hereditatis columna erecta, hagion citon erafon, nods a nap for the nonce, but crows cheerio when they get eponemical, is a simultaneous equator of eliminated integras when 3 upon 1 is by inspection improper, as the most conical hodpiece of confusionist hair on him, and that chochophus chin-chin of his is like a footsie congaloo around Taishanti land. He's as globeful as a gasometer of lithium and luridity, and he was thrice 10 annular years before he wallowed round radiant circles. The cobblestone at the coping of his cabin is a canine constant, but only an American could approximate the apopresiosity of his at last allungement. Stickled rights and lefts that bears down in his hunt for the poor truth, but made his end with the moderads that came at him in Camlin Street. A Hannibal in exhaustive conflict, an Otho to return. Burning body to eager air on melting mountain in wooing wave. We go into him sleepy children, we come out of him strucklers for life. He divested to save from the Mrs. Drownings their rival queens, while Grimshaw, Bragshaw, and Renshaw made off with his storen clothes. Taxed and rated, licensed and rampant. His three-faced stone head was found on a white horse hill, and the print of his Costellus feet is seen in the goat's grass circle. Pull the blind, toll the deaf, and call dumb, lame, and haughty. Miraculone monstrutuline led the applause at the creation, and hissed a snake charmer off her stays. Hounded become haunter, hunter become fox, harrier, marrier, terrier, tav. Olaf the oxman, Torquer the tourable. You feel he is Vespasian, yet you think of him as Aurelius. Wagamore, trader, Tory, socialist, commonizer. Made a summer assault on our shores, and Big Giddy got his sands full. First he shot down Raglan Road, and then he tore up Marlborough Place. Cromlech Height and Cromwell Hill were his far-famed feet rest, when our lurchers lout let free into the Lubar he loved. Marshalled his wardmost, and delimited the main. Netted before nibbling, can scarce turn a scale, but grossed after meals, weighs a town in himself. Vanba prayed for his conversion. Berla missed that grand old voice, a colossus among cabbages, the Melaran citrone of fruit, larger than life, doughtier than death, Gran Turco, Orej Forment, laxum bulger, leper lean, the sparkle of his genial fancy, the depth of his calm sagacity, the clearness of his spotless honour, the flow of his boundless benevolence. Our family fur-bear, our tribal turnpike. Quarry was he invincible, and Cur was he burnt. Partitioned Erska home, united Irishmen. He took a swig at his own method, but she tasted a bit gawky, and as for the salmon, he was coming up in him all lifelong. Come, Eilerdick, Heckleberry, and Sawyer thee, Warden. Silent as the bee in honey, stark as the breath on hawk. Costello, Kinsella, Mahony, Moran. Though you rope Amric, your home ruler is Dan. Figure right, he is hoisted by the scurve of his shaggy neck. Figure left, he is rationed in isobaric patties among the crew. One asks, was he poisoned? One thinks, how much did he leave? Ex-gardener, Riesengebirge, fitted up with cancerous existences, would make Rosio greedy, mites, little hose. Taut sheets and scuppers awash, but the oil silk Mac Liebster pet mix his aqua scrutum. The enjoyment he took in K-women, the employment he gave to G-men, sponsor to a squad of Pierces, ally to a host of Raleighs, against lightning, explosion, fire, earthquake, flood, whirlwind, burglary, third party, rot, loss of cash, loss of credit, impact of vehicles, can rant as grave as oxtail soup, and chat as gay as a Porto flippant, is unhesitant in his unionism, and yet a bigoted nationalist. Sylvia Cola is shy of him. Matt Rosenhosens knows the joke, shows the sinews of peace in his chest of wars. Fief of home, 939 years of coffee hold, is all days open for Polymypolity's sake, when he's not sometimes closed for the love of Janus. Sucks life's elixir from the petty pickles of the Jewess, and rowels in sucks if any popeling runs down the Huguenots. Boomaport, Wallace Lee, Obermarschall, Bloucher and Supercharger, Monsieur Ducrot, Mr. Mudson, Master Gardener. To one he's just paunch and judex, to another full of beans and Breton. Hallucination, Couchman, ectoplasm, passed for Baba Black Sheep till he grew white woo-woo-woolly, was dramatized by Macmilligan's daughter, and put to music by one Schubard. All Fitzpatricks in his emirate remember him. The boys of Whetford hail him Babu. indanified himself with borough tribute, and was shanked publicly to Brigstow. Was given the light in dry orchards, and entomold in threeplexes. His likeness is in terraquit, and he giveth rest to the rainbows, liberality, fraternity, and quality. His reverse makes a virtue of necessity, while his obverse mars a mother by invention. This skilk his gunwale, and he's the second imperial, untie points, unhook tenters, and he's Latin plaster. Calls upon all things when he fails to appeal to each of us. Basidens, Ardri, Kongzema, Rex Regulorum, stood into Deemouth, then backed broadside on Boiler Cleaver. Either Eldorado or ultimate toll. A crawl of 4 feud fires, a crawl of 5 pubs. Laid out lashings of laveries to hunt down his family ancestors, and then pled double trouble or quick quits to hush the buckers up. Threw peblets for luck over one sodden shoulder, and dragooned peaplades armed to their teeth. Pept as Gaudio Gambrinus, grim as Pot of the Grave. Ace of Hearts, Deuce of Damimon, Trouble of Clubs, Fear of Space. Come brum, twy nicey nurses for a drum, but tre to uno tips the scale. Reeled the title roll opposite a brace of girdles in silver on the screen, but was sequenced from the set as crookback by the even more titulars Rick, Dave, and Barry. He can get on as early as the 22nd of Mars, but occasionally he doesn't come off before Virginti Quinque Germinal. His Indian name is Hapapusis Objibwe, and his number in arithmosophy is the stars of the plough. Took weapon in the province of the pike, and let fling his line on Eelwick. Moves in vicus stickles, yet remews the same. The drain rats bless his offals, while the park birds curse his floodlights. Portobello, Equadocta, Veracocta, Percorello. He pours into the soft-clad Shelbourne the hard cash earned in Watling Street. His birth proved accidental shows his death its grave mistake. Brought us giant ivy from the land of Junkers, and bewithered Apostolopolis with the gale of his Gaul. While satisfied that soft, youthful, bright, matchless girls should bosom into fine, silk-clad, joyous, blooming young women, is not so pleased that heavy, swearsome, strong-smelling, irregular-shaped men should blot out active, handsome, well-formed, frank-eyed boys. Herald, hairy fair, all off the wheat. Husband your aunt and endow your nipple. Hearken, but hush it, screen him and see. Time is an archbishopric, time was a tradesman's entrance. Beck burn brooked with wasp, scales scarred by scow. His rainfall is a couple of knee-highs, while his minced grouse temperature, marked 3 in the shade, is the melting point of snow and the bubbling place of alcohol. Has a tussle with the trolls, and then does himself justice. Hinted at in the eschatological chapters of Humphrey's Justice of the JPs, and hunted for by Theban resenters, who sniff there's something behind the bug of the deaf. The king was in his corner wall, milking Marks O'Murray. The queen was steep in amber, feeling fain and furry. The maids was midst the hawthorns, chewing up their hose. Out pimped the back guards, pomp, and pump gun they goes. To all his foretellers he reared a stone, and for all his comethers he planted a tree. 40 acres, 60 miles, white stripe, red stripe, washes his fleet in Anachor water. Oh, Mr. Porter, so what shall he do? For he wanted to sit for Pimlico, but they've caught him to stand for Sioux. Dutch Lord, overawes us. Headmound, king and martyr, Dunstung in the east, Peter le Poor in Petrin, Bart the Great by the exchange. He hastens towards dame's troth and wedding hand, like the Prince of Orange and Nassau, while he has Trinity left behind him, like bold beggar Bill the bust only. Brow of a hazelwood pool in the dark, changes Blowicks into bullocks, and a well of Artesia into a bird of Arabia. The handwriting on his face wall, the crypto-conchoid siphonostomata in his expression. His birth spot lies beyond the Hellespont, and his burial plot in the pleasant little field. Is the Ildes kiosk on the peninsula, and the unguessed hostel in St. Scholarland. Walked many hundreds and many score miles of streets, and lit thousands in one nightlights in hectares of windows. His great wide cloak lies on 15 acres, and his little white horse decks by dozens outdoors. Oh, sorrow the sail and woe the rudder that was set for Mary Kay. His sons the Huns, his daughters the Tartars, are plenty here today, who repulsed from his burst the bomb bolts of Ostenton, and falchioned each flash down the duck in the deep. A personal problem? A locative enigma. Upright one, vehicule of arcanization in the field, lying chap, flood supplier of saliculation through Ebblane. A part of the hull as a port for a whale. Dear Hewitt Castello Equerry, we're daylighted with our outing and are looking backwards to unearly summers from rhododendrons. Is above the seed fruit level and outside the leguminiferous zone. When older links lock older hearts, then he'll resemble she. Can be built with glue and clippings, scrawled or voided on a buttress. The Night Express sings his story, the song of sparrow notes on his stave of wires. He crawls with light, he swarms with staggart. Is as quiet as a mursk, yet can be as noisy as a synagogue. Was Dillman when his date was palmy, and Mudlin when his nut was cracked. Suck up the seas, left Lord at ease, one lip on his lap and one cushlin his creep. His porter has a mighty grasp, and his Baxter's the boon of broad white. As far as wind dries and rain eats, and sun turns and water bounds, he is exalted and depressed, assembled and asunder. Go away, we are deluded. Come back, we are disghosted. Board the Ostroff, leapt the Inferus, swam the Mabel and flew the Moyle. Like fat, like tallow, of greasefulness, yea, of dripping greasefulness. Did not say to the old, did not say to the scorbutic. He has founded a house, Uru, a house he has founded to which he has assigned its fate. Bears a raven girlant on a fjeld dive. Rose the halo of his valet when he appeared to his she-cook as haycock, emmet, boro, toro, osteric, mangy, and skunk. Pressed the beer of ailed age out of the nettles of rashness. Put a roof on the lodge for him and a cock in his pot pro homo. Was Dapperfer, then Panzer Senser, then Hortifex Magnus. The topes that tippled on him, the types that toppled off him. Till starts our hares, yet gates our goat. Pocketbook, packet boat, gapman, gun run. The light of other days, dire, dreary darkness. Our awful dad, Timor of Tortor. Puzzling, startling, shocking, nay, perturbing. Went puffing from Kingsborough to new customs, doffing the gibbet off him to every breach of all size. With pa's new heft and papa's new helve, he's papa's old cutlass, papa left us. When young-headed, old-shouldered, and middlish neck-aged about. Caller herring every daily, turgid tarpon overnight. See Lorien the Comalian, that changed endocrine history by loaving his loaf with 40 bannocks. She drove him deaf till he driv her blind up. The pigeons, doves be perching all over him one day at Basil's Bridge, and the ravens dove be pitching their dark nets after him the next night, behind Königstein's arbour. Trumph of the rep, comf of the priv, prosp of the pub. His headward its ideal, if his feet are ballyclay. He crashed in the hollow of the park, trees down, as he soared in the vacuum of the Phoenix, stones up. Looks like a molten bolter, and sounds like a rude word. The mountain view, some lumen pale round a lamp of succor in boiling water. 3 shots of puddy, at up Blopsuddle. Made up to Miss McCormack Neela Carthy, who made off with Darley Dermot, swank and swarthy. Once diamond cut garnet, now dammit cuts Groney. You might find him at the Florence, but watch out for him in Wynn's Hotel. Here's his bow, and where's his leaker, and here lays his be quiet hearse, deep. Swed Albiony, likeliest villain of the place. Henry Canterell Cochrane, egotistas limited. We take our tays and freeze our fleas round Saturn's mounted foot. Built the Lun's kirk and destroyed the church's land. Who guess his title grabs his deeds. Fletch and Prighties, fashion chaps. Artful Duke of Wiley-Sly, Hugglebelly's Funirolls, Cock Calicac, heard in camera and excruciated. Boon when the bench is billeted, ban if buckshot back-shattered. Heaven-gendered, chaos-feated, earth-born. His father presumptively ploughed it deep on overtime, and his mother, as all evince, must have travailed her fair share. A footprints on the magazine, hetman unhorsed by searing sand. Honorary captain of the extemporized fire brigade, reported to be friendly with the police. The door is still open. The old stock collar is coming back, not forgetting the time you laughed at Elder Charterhouse's duck-white pants, and the way you said the whole township can see his hairy legs. By stealth of a curse, her auburn tress abaft his nape she hung. When his kettle became a hearth-scaldus, our Forstyites set their lymphium fire. His year letter concocted by master hands of assays, his hallmark imposed by the standard of wrought plate, a pair of pectorals and a triple screen to get a wind up, lights his pipe with a rosin tree and hires a tow horse to haul his shoes, cures slavies' scurvy, breaks barons' boils, called to sell polish and was found later in a bedroom, has his seat of justice, his house of mercy, his cornucopias and his stacks awry. Prospector, he had a rucksack. Retrospector, he holds the halpenstake. Won the freedom of New York for the minds of jugger slaves. Acts active, peddles in passivism, and is a gorgon of self-religiousness. Pours a laugh's worth of his information over a lamb's worth of salt. Half heard the single maiden's speech La Belle spun to her grand mount, and hold a lifetime by his ain fireside, wondering was it Hebrew set to himmeltones, or the quicksilver song of quaternion. His troubles may be over, but his doubles have still to come. The lobster pot that crabbed our keel, the garden pet that spoiled our squeezed peas. He stands in a lovely park, sea is not far, importunate towns of X, Y, and Z are easily overreached. Is an excrescence to civilized humanity, and but a wart on Europe. Wanna made sing signs to sound sense, and yet he wanna get all his flesh-new made moths truly plural and plausible. Has excessively large rings, and is uncustomarily perfumed. Lusteth at he listeth the clear whisper of a Thames. Is a prince of the Fingallian in a Hiberniad of hoolies. Has a Hodge to weary him, and a Frenchie to curry him, and a Brabanson for his beater, and a Fritz at his switch. Was waylaid of a Parker, and beshotten by a Buckley. Kicks lintels when he's copy, and casts Jacob's arrowroots, dime after dime, to poor waste strays on the parish. Reads the charms of H.C.E. all the weeks of his evening, and the crimes of Ivan the Terrible, every strong day morn. Soaps you soft to your face, and slaps himself when he's baddened. Owns the bulgiest bung barrel that ever was tip-tapped in the privacy of the Mullingar Inn. Was born with a newer silver tongue in his mouth, and went round the coast of iron with his lift hand to the scene. Raised but 2 fingers, and yet smelt it would they, for whom it is easier to found a sea in Eblana than for I or you to find a double tie in Amsterdam. To live with whom is a life, Maya, and to know whom a liberal education. Was dipped in hoily olives, and christened in St. O'Toole's. Hears cricket on the earth, but annoys the life out of predicants. Still turns the dirk's ear of Darius to the now thoroughly infuriated one of God. Made man with juts that jerk, and minted money mong many. Likes a 6-a-cup pudding when he's come home, sweet home. Has come through all the eras of live's adventure, from moonshine and champagne down to clouts and pottled porter. Willem the First, Heinrich the Eighth, Charles the Second, Richard the Third. If a mandrake shriek to convultures at last surviving his birth, the wild duck will wail bitterly over the rotter's resurrection. Loses weight in the moonlight, but girds Gerda by the sundawn. With one touch of nature, set a veiled world a-grin, and went within a sheet of tissue paper of the option of 3 jails. Who could see at one blick a salmon taken with a lance, hunters pursuing a doe, a swallow ship in full sail, a white robe lifting a host. Faced flappery like old King Canute, and turned his back like Cincinnatus. Is a far and more far and a whorefather naked bucker in villas old as new. Squats a quart and cracks a quaint when it's flagging in town and on haven. Blows whiskery around his summit, but states stout upon his footles. Stutters for he falls and goes mad entirely when he's waked. Is Tim to the pearly morn, and Tomb to the morning night. And an he had the best bun-bath bricks in bald Babylon for his pitching plays, he'd be lost for the want of his one wobbling wall. Answer: Finn McCool. 2. Does your mutter know your Mike? Answer: when I turn me optics from such urban prospects, 'tis my filial's bosom doth behold with pride that pontificator and circumvallator, with his damn knight garrulous, slipped by his side. And alive the lisp of her, 'twould Grig mountains whisper her, and the bergs of Iceland melt in waves of fire, and her spoon me spondies, and her dirtle me andonies, make the rageous Ossian kneel and quaff a lyre. If Dan's Dane, Anne's dirty, if he's plain, she's purty, if he's fain, she's flirty, with her orbant streams, and her coy cajoleries, and her dabbling drolleries, for to rouse his rudder up, or to drench his dreams. If hot Hammurabi or coward Ecclesiastes could espy her pranklings, they'd burst bounds again, and renounce their ruings, and denounce their doings, for river and ever and a night. Amen. 3. Which title is the true to type motto in you, for that tick for toch thatchment painted wit with one darkness, where a snake is under clover, and birds a prowler in the rookeries, and a Magda went to Monk's house, and a river pard was spotted, which is not witchcraft warort, nor Auster home dreischluss, not Haroldsby grocer, not vat and can vintner, not houseboat and hive, not knocks at a bell, not o Phoenix coal prince, not Vaughan squire Roomyek, not Eblon Downs, not Ladesa Lemieux, not Benjamin's Lee, not Ptolemy's Waddington, not Antwerp, not Moscow, not Corries, not Weirs, not the Arch, not the Smug, not the Dutch House, not the Oval, nothing grand, nothing splendid, grahat or splettel, neither erat est erit, nor non mihi sed lucifero. Answer, thine obesity, O civilian, hits the felicitude of our orb. 4. What Irish capital city, there, of 2 syllables and 6 letters, with a Celtic origin and a Newness end, dust, O dust, can boast of having A, the most extensive public park in the world, B, the most expensive brewing industry in the world, C, the most expansive peopling thoroughfare in the world, D, the most philo-hypoc-theobibus population in the world, and harmonize your ABCD'd responses? Answer, A, Belfast. And when you'll hear the gold hammers of my heart, my floxy loss, bing-banging again the ribs of your resistance, and the tender bolts of my rivets working to your distraction, you'll be shivering wi' all your dinful sobs, when we'll go riding a coop o' curly, you with your orange garland, and me with my conny cordial, down the grease ways of rollicking into the waters of wetted life. B, Dork. And sure, where can you have such good old chimes anywhere, and leave you, as on the mash, and how 'tis I would be engaging you with my plovery soft accents, and descanting up over the scene beyonder me of your loose vines in their hairfall, with them 2 loving loofs braceleting the slims of your ankles, and your mouth's flower rose, and sinking off to the soapstone of silvery speech. C, Nublid. Issy, why wouldn't we be happy of earning on the mill's money he'll soon be leaving you, as soon as I've my own owned Brookline Georgian mansion's lawn to recruit upon by Dr. Cheek's special orders, and my coppers panful of soybeans and Irish in my east hand, and a James's Gate in my west, after all the arrears and erroribus of comparative embottled history, and your good self churning over the new-leaved butter, more power to you. The choicest and the cheapest from Atlanta to Oconee, while I'll be drowsing in the garden. D, Galway. I hooked my thoroughgoing trotty the first down Spanish place. I make 2 o' my takes, Sligo sleek, but Galway's grace. Holy eel and sainted salmon, chucking, chub and ducking days, rod irons not your equal, says she, lepping half the lane. ABCD. A bell on Shaldal steeple, and we'll go maspel on Christmas people. Shand praise gonnes our feast mo neeple, our prain shan deepen, pe name muy feepens, moi ne non equal. 5. What slags of a loch lad would retin smutty flesks, empty out old mans, milk vicious gate, scare off Jack and Jills fra Tiddle Landing, smooth pick waste papish pastures, insides man, outsiders angel, sprink dirted water around village, newses to baggin and Swedes, plain general kept, louden on the kirk peal, foot treats given to malifides, out shriek yelp, yelp, nor his hair after boggalors, might underhold 3 barnets, puts polish crotty bots, night cover all fire glims, serves time till bass, grindstone his knives is, fullest boarded, lewd man of the method of godliness, perchance he knows and thans sits in the spoor wagon, ex-WCA, on ZWCU doorsteps limited, or bay windows broth swabber preferred. Walter Closeters and Sons, with the H.C.E. Chimneys Company, to not scrave, will, on advices, be bacon or stable hand, must be gripe full-standingly Irers Langurge, Jublander or North Quain bigger preferred, all duties, kind rights, family feud, outings 5, may get ernst, no get cumbish, profusional drink lords to please abstain, he is fatherlow soundig din mood mind pershun, but ale Connor man, nay, that must he isn't. Answer, poor old Joe. 6. What means the saloon slogan, summon in the house sweet diner? Answer, talk. Glory bitted the sails of cloth now, and I have to beeswax the bringing in all the club of the porks to us. How I thought I knew his stain on the flower, if me ask and can could speak, and he called me by me midden name. Tick, I am your honeysucker, foot the bay, and who brought the dandelass, and who seen the black cullen jam for tomorrow's big picnic. I hope it'll praise the climate of all Ireland. I heard the grattles and I skimming the crock, and all your sandwiches 5 per leg per drake. Tuck. And who ate the last of the goose bellies that was moulding from measless years, and who left that there, and who put that here, and who let the Kilkenny stale the chump? Peck. And who was it propped the pot in the yard, and what in the name of St. Luke are you rubbing the side of the floor of the lobby with? Shite. Will you have a plateful? Tack. 7. Who are those component partners of our society? The doorboy, the cleaner, the soldier, the crook, the squeezer, the lounger, the curman, the tourabout, the mushroom sniffer, the bleak-a-blue tramp, the fun-powder plotter, the Christy man's boxer, from their Pré-Salé and Donnybrook Prater and Roebuck's Campos and the Adger around town and Crumglen's grassy but Kimmage's champ, and Ashtown fields and Cabra fields and Finglass fields and Santry fields, and the fields of Raheny and their fails and Baldoyle to them, who are late comers all the years round by anticipation, are the porters of the passions in virtue of retro-rationation, and contributing their confringent controversies of differentiation, unify their boxes in a vote of vaticination, who crunch the crusts of comfort due to depredation, drain the mead for misery to incur intoxication, condone every evil by practical justification, and condemn any good to its own gratification, who are ruled, roped, duped, and driven by those numen daimons, the fee-keepers at their laws, nightly consternation, fortnightly fornication, monthly misericordation, and omniannual recreation, Doyles when they deliberate, but Sullivans when they are swords, Matey, Teddy, Simon, Jorn, Peter, Andy, Barty, Philly, Jamesy Moore, and Tom, Matt, and Jakes McCarthy? Answer, the Morpheo. 8. And how were your Maggies? Answer, they were loving, they love laughing. They laugh weeping, they weep smelling, they smell smiling, they smile hating, they hate thinking, they think feeling, they feel tempting, they tempt daring, they dare waiting, they wait taking, they take thanking, they thank seeking, as born forlorn in lore of love, to live and wive by wile and rile, by rule of Ruth, wreathed rose, and hose hold home, yet cometh Elopia, coach and four, sweet peck at my heart, picks one man more. 9. Now to be on anew and basking again in the panorama of all floors of speech, if a human being duly fatigued by his deity in the sooty having plenty of time on his gouty hands, and vacance of space at his sleepish feet, and as hapless behind the dreams of accuracy as any Camelot prince of Denmark, were at this actual future preteriting instant in the states of suspensive exanimation accorded, through the eye of a noodle, with an ear-sighted view of old Hope and Haven, with all the ingredient and egregient whites and ways to which, in the curse of his persistence, the course of his story will had been having recourses, the reverberation of nut-cracking oars, the reconjugation of node-binding eyes, the redissolutingness of mind-moulded ease, and the thereby hang of the whole of it, could such a nun, whiles even led come silences to come lie with hers, and till impetuous knocks should catch the galley cry and spot Lucan's dawn, by hold at one's what is main and white is twain, how one once meet melts in t'other once pinings, the sap rising, the foals falling, the nim now nihilant round the girly head so becoming, the restless in the womb, all the rivals to all see, shake again, oh disaster, shake a lose, ah how starring, but Heng's got a bit of horse's nose, and Jeff's got the signs of ham round his mouth, and the bow that spun beautiful pales as it palls. What rose rode and outrageous grows gelb and green, blue out the end of it, violets dyed. Then what would that far-gazer seem to see himself to seeming of, dim it all? Answer, a kaleidoscope. 10. What bitters love but yearning, what sour love much but a breath burning, till she that draws doth smoke return? Answer, I know, Pipette, of course, dear, but listen, precious. Thanks, pet, those are lovely, Pitronette, delicious. But mind the wind, sweet. What exquisite hands you have, you angel. If you didn't gnaw your nails, isn't it a wonder you're not ashamed of me, you pig, you perfect little pigaline? I'll nudge you in a minute. I bet you use her best Parisian smear off her vanity table to make them look so rose-topped, low-stop, no-stop. I know her. Slight me, would she, for every got I care. 3 creamings a day, the first during her shower and wipe off with tissue, then after clean-up, and of course before retiring. Give me shawl, when I think of that espouse of a Clan Carbery, the food brawler of the Associationist party, with his black-leaded chest. Hello, Prendergast, that you innkeeper, and all his 14 other full-back maulers, or hurling stars, or whatever the day goes they are, baiting at my Lord Honour is, just because they won the egg and spoon there, so overly provincial at Baldole. My Irish accent, his seed, makes his admiration. He is seeking an opening, and means to be first with me as his belle alliance. And do must no plays the loso. So do toda, such is Spanish. Stoop a little closer, feed. Delightsome, simply, like Giolio and Romeo. I haven't felt so Turkish for ages and ages. Minds me of Squishes, the chocolate with the soul. Extraordinary. Why, what are they all, the mucky lot of them only? Shh! I wouldn't pay 3 hairpins for them. Kept. That's right. Hold it steady. Leg me pull. Pooh. Come big to Iran. Pooh. What are you nudging for? No, I just thought you were. Listen, loveliest. Of course it was too kind of you, miser, to remember my size and shockings, my often expressed wish when you were wandering about my trousseaux, and before I forget it, don't forget, in your extensions to my personality, when knotting my remembrance tie, Shoe Week will be trotting back with red heels at the end of the moon, but look what the fool bought, cabbage head, and as I shall answer to gracious heaven, I'd always remind of snappy new garters, me being always the one for charms, with my very best in proud and gloving, even if he was to be vermilion miles my youth to live on, the rubber-end Mr. Pokingtone, the Quonian fleshmonger whom Mother Brown solicited me for unlawful converse with her mug of October, a pops on it, creaking around on his old shank's axle like a crusty old cornquake, airman, water wag, terrier blazer. I'm fine, thanks ever. Ha! Oh, mind you, poor Dicky. Shall I put him in Momo? Mum. Funny spot to have a fingy.
I'm terribly sorry, I swear to you I am. May you never see me in my birthday pelstine so tutu, and that her blanches manges may rot lepers off her, whatever winking maggots I'll bet by your cut you go flirting after with all the glass on her, and the jumps in her stomwhere. Ha! I suspected she was. Sink her. May they fire her for a barren ewe. So she says, "Tay for thee." Well, I say, angst so much, and desired she might not take it amiss if I esteemed her but an odd. If I did a tough turf, I'm not a missy. Of course I know, Pettist, you're so learningful and considerate in yourself, so friend of vegetables, you long, cold cat, you. Please be acquiescer to meek my acquaintance. Codling, snakelet, iciclist, my diaper has more life to it. Who drowned you in Dreer's, man, or are you pale with ink? Did a weep get past the gates of your pride? I tread on the clover, sweetness. Yes, the buttercups told me, hug me, damn it all, and I'll kiss you back to life, my peaches. I mean to make you suffer, meddler, and I don't care this fig for contempt of courting. That I chid you, sweet sir. You know I'm tender by my eye. Can't you read by dazzling ones through me true? Bite my laugh tears, drink my tears, pour into me volumes, spell me stark and spill me swooning. I just don't care what my thwarters think. Transname me loveliness, now and hear me for all times. I'd risk a policeman passing by, McGrath, or even that beggar of a boots at the post. The flame! Oh, pardon. That was what? Did you speak, stuff? More poestries from Shakespeare's with glee-choral music, or ejaculation from the garden of the soul? Of I believe in the immoralities? Oh, you mean the strangle for love, and the swivel of the prettiest? Yep, we open hap-causeries in the home, and once upon a week I improve on myself. I'm so keen on that new free woman with novel inside. I'm always as tickled as can be over man in a surplus by the lady who pays the rates. But I'm as pie as is possible. Let's root out Bryn Stoker and give him the thrall of our lives. It's Dracula's night out. For creep's sake, don't make a flush. Draw the shades curfew, and I'll beat any son a monk to love. Holy bug, how my highness would jump to make you flame your half a bannon in two, when I'd run my burning torchlight through to adore me there, and then cease to be. Whatever for, blossoms? You'd hair me jig if you had one. If I am laughing with you, no, lovingest, I'm not so dying to take my rise out of you, adored. Not in the very least. True as God made my mamma hip-length modesty coat-mother. It's only because the reason is I'm only any girl, you lovely fellow of my dreams, and because old Sumbooby is not around about, my trysting of the tulip is, like that puff-pape bucking Doveran a-soiling us behind. What a nerve. He thinks that's what the vespers for. How vain's that hope in cleric's heart, who still pursues the adulterous art, cocksure that rusty gown of his will make fair Sue forget his phiz. Tame schwips. Blessed Marguerite bosses, I hope they threw away the mould, or else we'll have Balschossers and sourdough applers with their medical associations all over the place. But hold hard till I've got my latchkey vote, and I'll teach him when to wear what women call ours, on account of the gloss of the Gleason Hasaboo Brobies is a bobel. And because, you pluckless lankaloot, I hate the very thought of you, and because, dearling, of course, adore us, I was always meant for an engineer from the French college to be husband, nom d'un chien. When we do and contract with Incho Solver, when you are married to reading and writing, which please business now won't be long, for he's so loopy on me, and I'm so leapy-like since the day he carried me from the boat, my saviour of heroes, to the beach, and I left on his shoulder one fair hair to guide hand and mind to its softness. Ever so sorry. I beg your pardon. I was listening to every treasured word I said fell from my dear Mott's tongue. Otherwise, how could I see what you were thinking of our granny? Only, I wondered if I threw out my shaving water. Anyway, Here's my arm, pull it neck, gracefully yours. Move your mouth toward mine, more preciousest, more on more. To please me, treasure. Don't be I'm not going to. Shh. Nothing. A creak somewhere. Bye-bye. I'm fly. Here, Pippi, under the limes. You know big tree are all against gravestones. They hiss tenancy. Garn done man. So chip chirrup chigolo for the lug of my door. The little past door I go you before, so, and you're at my apron stage. Shy is him, Dobby. Must forget there's an audience. I have been lost, angel. Coddle ye, devil ye. It's our toot-a-toot. Here, sensation. Let them their whole 4 courtships. Let them. Big Ball and his boozers 11 makes 12 territorials. The old sots hold at once wide streets to commission their nuisance in at the Mitchells versus Nichols. Aves selve aquae valles. And my waiting 20 class birds, sitting on their stiles, let me finger their eurythmic, and you'll see if I'm self-taught. They're all of them out to please. Wait, in the name of, and all the holly, and some the missel and its and ives. Whost, ahem. There's Ada, Bet, Celia, Delia, Ina, Fretta, Gilda, Hilda, Eta, Jess, Catty, Lou. They make me cough as sure as I read them. Mina, Nippa, Opsy, Paul, Queenie, Ruth, Saucy, Trix, Una, Vela, Wanda, Xenia, Eva, Zulma, Phoebe, Thelma, and me. The reformatory boys is goaling in for the church, so we've all come feast like the group suppers and court lip solution from anti-providence under penances for mortal sin. When their bride was married, all my bells began to ting. A ring, a rose a ring. Then everyone will hear of it. Whose as wishes is the father to my thought. But I'll plant them a poser for their nomenclator. When they're out with the day nurse doing chaperone mal, bright pigeons all over the world will fly with my mistletoe message round their love-ribboned necks and a crumb of my cake for each chasta diva. We keeps all and sundry papers in the moorlight, oh, my darling. No, I swear to you, by Phibsborough Church Dome and St. Andre's Undershift, by all I hold secret from my world and in my underworld of nighties and naughties and all the other wonder worlds. Close your not must look. Now open, pet, your lips, pet, like I used my sweet parted lips with Dan Holohan of facetious memory taught me after the flannel dance. With the proof of love up Smock Alley the first night he smelled powder and I coloured beneath my fan, pipetta mia, when you learned me the lingo to melt. Who wham would have ears like ours, the black-haired? Do you like that, silenzioso? Are you enjoying this same little me, my life, my love? Why do you like my whispering? Is it not divinely delicious? But ain't it baffle you? Missy, tell me till my thrill me comes. I will not break the seal. I am enjoying it still, I swear I am. Why do you prefer it in these dark nets, if I may ask, my sweetie-kin? Shh. Long ears is flying. No, sweetest. Why would that annoy me? But don't. You want to be slapped for that. Your delighted lips, love, be careful. Mind my duvetine dress above all. It's gold and silver, the newest sex stones with princess effect. For Rutland blue is got out of passion. So, my precious. Oh, I can see the cost share. Don't tell me. Why, the boy in Sheep's Lane knows that. If I sell whose, dears? Was I sold here, tears? You mean those conversation lozenges? How awful. The bold shame of me. I wouldn't, chickens. Not for all the Juliets in the twinkly way. I could snap them when I see them winking at me in bed. I did so, my intended, or was going to, or thinking of. Shh. Don't start like that, you wretch. I thought ye knew all and more, ye author, to explique to ones the significat of their existence with your neu nivell on lead. It's only another queer fish or other in Brynbrew's damned old troucherous river again. God a wish a goss bless us and spare her. and give us rest from the basso. Excuse me for swearing, love. I swear to the Saracens on their thrones of Uyan. I didn't mean to by this Alpin armlet. Did you really never in all our Cantalang lives speak clothes to a girl's before? No, not even to the charmer maid? How marvellous! Of course I believe you, my own dear doting liest, when you tell me, as I'd live to, oh, I'd love to. List, I must wist. Never that ever or I can remember dear streaming faces you may go through me. Never in all my whole white life of my matchless and pair, or ever for bitter be the fruit of this hour. With my whiteness I thee woo, and bind my silk breasts I thee bound. Always amory, amor and more, till always thou lovest. So long as the locksmith laughs. 11. If you met on the binge a poor exile from Ailing, when the tune of his tremble shook shimmy on shin, while his contrary raged in the week of his wailing, like a rugilant, pugilant lion o' lin, if he maundered in misliness, plaining his plight, or played fox and lice, pricking and dropping hips' teeth, or wringing his handcuffs for peace, the blind blighter, praying Duff and dumb nostrums for thumpings to eat, if he wept while he leapt and guffled with a whimper, made cold blood a blue Monday and no bones without fletch, taking kiss, cake, or kick with a sock sigh or simper, a diffle to lan and a dibble to lech, if the fain shinner pegged you to shave his immartial, wee skill-mustered shoal with his who-to-do, broking wind that to whiles woe-made sin he was partial, we don't think, Jones, we'd care to this evening, would you? Answer, no, Blanky. So, you think I have impulsivism? Did they tell you I am one of the 46? And I suppose you heard I had a wag on my ears, and I suppose they told you, too, that my role of life is not natural. But before proceeding to conclusively confute this begging question, it would be far fitter for you, if you dare, to hesitate to consult with, and consequentially attempt at my disposal of the same dime cash problem elsewhere, naturalistically, of course, from the blink point of so eminent a specialist. From it you will hear notice shot upon my, for the first remarking you, that the sophology of Bitchin, while driven as under by a purely dime urge, is not without his cash characteristics, borrowed for its nonce ends from the fiery good mother Misfortune, who the last time we had the pleasure we have had our little recherche brush with, what? Shot? And, as I further could have told you, as brisk as your DBC behavioristically piety with a coat of homoid icing, which is in reality only a done-by-chance ridiculization of the who and where's hair's theorics of Weinstein. To put it all the more clumsily, the speech form is a mere surrogate, whilst the quality and tality, I shall explic what you ought to mean by this, with its proper when and where and why and how, in the subsequent sentence, are alternatively harrogate and arrogate as the gates may be. Talus is a word often abused by many passims. I am working out a quantum theory about it, for it is really most tantalizing state of affairs. A pessim may frequent you to say, have you been seeing much of Talus and Talus those times? Optimately meaning, will you put up a tree of Irish? Or a lady eater may perhaps have casualized, as you tempted her à la sourdine, of your plates is Talus de Talus, the sword swallower, who is on at the criterium, the same Talus von Talus, the pins crusher, no funk you, who runs his duly mile? Or this is a perhaps cleaner example. At a recent post-vortex piece in fustigation of a determinized case of chronic spinosis, an extension lecturer on the ague who, out of matter of form, was trying his Caesars, Dr. Hetzo believed, borrowed the question, why's which such man's talus qualis, to whom, as a fatter of Macht, Dr. Gedanke of Stoutgart, who was wiping his whistle, tersely retorted, while thou beest one zoom of a whore. Talus and talus originally mean the same thing, it's qualis. Professor Levi-Bruller, though, as I shall promptly prove, his whole account of the Sennacherib, as distinct from the Shalmanesia sanitational reforms, and of the Mr. Scakel's and Dr. Hyde's problem in the same connection, differs toto cielo from the fruit of my own investigations, though the reason I went to Jericho must remain, for certain reasons, a political secret, especially as I shall shortly be wanted in Coventry. I congratulate myself, for the same and other reasons, as being again hopelessly vitiated by what I have now resolved to call the dime and cash diamond fallacy. In his talked-of confession, which recently met with such a leonine uproar on its escape after its confinement, why am I not born like a Gentile man, and why am I now so speakable about my own eatables? Feigenbaum, Blatt and Father, Judah Pest, 5688 A.M., wholeheartedly takes off his gabber coat and wig, honest, drafty fellow, in his public interest, to make us see how, though, as he says, by all's will, the inception and the descent and the ends well of man is temporarily wrapped in obscenity. Looking through at these accidents with the faroscope of television, this nightlife instrument needs still some subtractionable betterment in the readjustment of the more refrangible angles to the squeals of his hypothesis on the outer tin sides. I can easily believe heartily in my own most spacious immensity, as my own house and microbemost cosm, when I am reassured by ratio that the cube of my volumes is to the surfaces of their subjects as the sphericity of these globes. I am very pressing for a parliamentary motion this term which, under my guidance, would establish the deleteriousness of decorousness in the morbidization of the modern man-about woman type, is to the veracity of Farinelli's vacuum. I need not apologize for any of intentional, I must here correct all that school of Neo-Italian or Paleo-Parisian scholar of tinkers and spanglers who say I'm wrong, parce que, out of revulsion from Romanitis I want to be, downtrodden on my foes. Professor Levi-Bruller, F.D., of Sex Weimann Eitelnacki, finds, from experiments made by Hin with his Nuremberg eggs in the one hands, and the watches Cunnaldrun upon the oven, though it is ostensibly a case of Ketzerabolians cooling the Pope's back, because the number of square faiths in weekly circulation will not be appreciably augmented by the nother slogging of my cupular clods. What the romantic in rags pines after, like all tom-tompions haunting crevices for a deadbeat escoopment, and what het importunes our mitleid for in a Cornish with the mortadella taradition, is the poorest common guardian waste of time. His ever-present toes are always in retaliation out throat his overpast boots. Hear him squawk. Teak heat to that loose swallower, how he bowled the bat. Tyro a Torre. When Malachi won the couple of coals, when we were stripping in number 3, I would like the neat drop that would malt in my mouth, but I fail to see when. I am purposely refraining from expounding the obvious fallacy as to the specific gravitates of the two deglutables implied, nor to the lapses Lecoux associated with the Royal Gorge through students of mixed hydrostatics and pneumodipstics, will, after some difficulties, grapple away with my Meinung. Murden allor, as old Marcellus Cambrianus puts his. But on Professor Chluechlis ap Brichlas, F.D., Ph. Doctor, showings, the plea, if he pleads, is all posh and robbage on a melodiontic scale, since his man's when is no other man's quandor, mine, thank you, while for aught I care for the contrary, the all is where in love as war, and the plain where me art sore you'd aisy rouse a thunder from, and where I cling true, 'tis there I climb tree, and where innocent looks best, pick, there's holly in his eyes. As my explanations here are probably above your understandings, Lattle Brattons, though as augmentatively uncomparisoned as Cadwan, Cadwallan, and Cadwallana, I shall revert to a more expletive method, which I frequently use when I have to sermo with muddle-crass pupils. Imagine, for my purpose, that you are a squad of urchins, sniffly-nosed, gosling-necked, clothy-headed, tangled in your lacings, tingled in your pants, etc., etc. And you, Bruno Nowlan, take your tongue out of your inkpot. As none of you knows Javanese, I will give all my easy free translation of the old fabulist's parable. Alaboy minor, take your head out of your satchel. Audi Joe Peters ex Audi facts. The mooks and the gripes. Gentes and laity men, full stoppers and semi-colonials, hybrids and lubbards. Eins within a space, and a weary wide space it was, ere warned a mooks. The onesomeness was stall too lonely, Arkansas like, broady oval, and a mooks he would a walking go. My hood, cries Anthony Romeo. So one grand summer evening, after a great morning and his good supper of gammon and spittish, having flabbled his eyes, pilioled his nostrils, vacticinated his ears, and palliumed his throats, he put on his impermeable, seized his impunable, hopped on his crown, and stepped out of his immobile de rure albo, so called, because it was chock full of master plasters, and had gorgeously let out gardens, strewn with cascadas, pentecostecas, orthodox, and currycombs, and set off from Ludstown a spasso to see how badness was badness in the weirdest of all pensible ways. As he set off,